Everybody plays the fool sometimes.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. We have quite a bit to get into tonight, ladies and gents. I do want to go ahead and jump in pretty quickly because our guest is waiting. So let me go ahead and show you the thumbnail that we are discussing tonight, ladies and gents. But shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. Let's go ahead and show you what we are discussing tonight. We will do call in tonight after the show, so stay tuned for that. Tonight, we are discussing big things are happening, folks. You see, Zionists are making a podcast tour here. Tonight, we are discussing Charlemagne the God versus Ben Shapiro. There are a number of things that I need to call out during this horrific interview that was done by the Breakfast Club, where they interviewed Ben Shapiro. It is just awful. We'll get into all of that. We're also going to discuss ZOHRAN Mandami has made a change. What is happening, folks? I see a number of ZOHRAN supporters on social media not too happy about his recent interview here with Al Sharpton. We'll get into that. We're also going to discuss, if you have not heard, Israel strikes Qatar. There's the picture there of Benjamin Netanyahu. This is big news. We'll get into what the logistics were and what I think this was really all about, ladies and gents. I think this was a trap. We're going to get into it. We're also going to discuss this Trump letter to Jeffrey Epstein has now been produced, or they are saying that it is produced. We're going to show you what that looks like and what does this mean in reference to what Mike Johnson had to say about Donald Trump being a federal agent here. It's all crazy. We'll get into it, folks. Hold on to your horses. And of course, our guest tonight is Dave DeCamp. He is here to talk about what's really going on in Venezuela, to break that down for everyone. And we're going to get into a little bit of Israel discussion as well about that Freedom Flotilla, the flotilla that was hit by the drone attack. as well as what happened in Jerusalem yesterday. There's a lot going on. Tonight's theme is everybody plays the fool, but not our special guest. He is an editor of Anti-War News. If you are not following them, make sure you do so. They are doing great work. Let's go ahead and bring him in. Welcome, Dave DeCamp. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Sabby. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. We have been watching your work. I've been watching a lot from antiwarnews.com. I think you guys do a great job. And I saw something from you recently about Venezuela. And this is something that I think quite a bit of people are getting wrong. Donald Trump has made it very clear that he is now referring to the Department of Defense as the Department of War, which is actually true. But you see this conflict with Venezuela is escalating. Donald Trump is saying that this is about drugs. What is really going on here? What is Donald Trump trying to do to Maduro and Venezuela?
Yeah, well, that is the narrative here, that this is about drug trafficking and fighting cartels. And that is something that the MAGA base does support, the idea of taking military action against cartels. But that's not really the real purpose of what's happening here. Because if you get down into the data and you look at the amount of drugs that actually come from Venezuela and come through the Caribbean, where the U.S. just bombed this boat, it's relatively small when it comes to the drugs that come into the U.S. One important point, I think, is that fentanyl does not come from Venezuela. It's not produced there, and it's not shipped through there, according to DEA data. It comes primarily from Mexico. And, a lot of the outrage driving this kind of push toward taking military action against cartels is over the fentanyl deaths, the opiate deaths in the U.S. But when it comes to Venezuela, the allegation is about cocaine. Back in 2020, Bill Barr, Trump's attorney general at the time, indicted Maduro over these claims that he's a narco-terrorist, and it's all about cocaine trafficking. But also, when you zoom in and look at the numbers, the majority of the cocaine that comes to the U.S. goes through the Pacific or Mexico. It goes that route, and just a small amount goes through Venezuela and the Caribbean. And Venezuela does border Colombia, which produces the most cocaine, like 90% of the cocaine in the world. So some is going to be trafficked through Venezuela, but there's really no evidence for this claim that Maduro is like a cartel leader. That's a new claim that we see from this current administration. And we just saw they increased the bounty on his head to $50 million. And so, we're being lied to in kind of a lot of different ways here. And one thing that's important to know is who is really the driving force behind all this. And it looks like Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is running the show. And he has wanted regime change in Venezuela for a very long time. When the first Trump administration tried it, he tweeted a picture of Muammar Gaddafi the moment he was being brutally murdered on the side of the road as a threat to Maduro. So that's the guy who is steering this policy. So, I mean, it's just they're using this, what I think is legitimate outrage from kind of the Trump base over the drug deaths here in the U.S. I do think it's foolish to try to, to turn the drug war into a hot war. I mean, what they're doing here is merging the drug war with the war on terror. It's like two failed things coming together. So in general, I'm against, this idea of bombing the cartels. But the people that want that, they're being fooled into supporting something that is just not even about that. It's a different agenda here. It's clearly that this is a push toward regime change, and we see all these warships deployed in the Caribbean now. And there's reports, and Trump himself has hinted that they're considering actually launching strikes in Venezuela.
Yeah. And this wouldn't be the first time that Trump has tried to find his way into Venezuela. And I think a lot of people forget this, David, but during Trump's first term, he implemented a coup in Venezuela and tried to deny that, but the writing is there on the wall. Anya Parampel from The Gray Zone wrote a book about this. It's called The Corporate Coup. I remember she came on my show to talk about it when her book was released. But Donald Trump to this day still claims, oh, I didn't know anything about that. So it's interesting that people who support Trump all of a sudden have this foggy memory. And they're just like, oh, yeah, he said there's drugs coming from Venezuela, so we got to stop those guys. Not to mention that he went after Venezuela before. So it is obvious that the U.S. government is trying to overthrow Venezuela's government. And my question is, what about the other countries in South America? Like, where do they stand on this issue?
I mean, from what I've seen, the president of Colombia has come out against it, even though Colombia is like a major non-NATO ally, has U.S. troops in the country. The president has called basically the claim, because the claim is that Maduro is the leader of the Cartel of the Suns, which doesn't actually exist. It's not like a real organization. It's a label that they use to describe kind of an alleged network of Venezuelan military officials. So he's, come out against saying, that doesn't exist. This is just an excuse to try to overthrow the government, which I thought that was interesting. And then in Mexico, their president, she denied U.S. claims, because another claim was that Maduro's tied to the cartels in Mexico. She denied those claims. We've seen Lula in Brazil come out against this. But of course, you also have, the other U.S. allies who have supported all the regime change efforts in Venezuela. But it does seem like, the thing is that it's such like a phony narrative. Even like there's these U.S. funded think tanks that do research on this stuff and are very critical of Maduro's government, and they probably want it to be overthrown too. But even they've come out and said, this is just they're misrepresenting everything here with this Cartel of the Suns thing and these claims about Maduro being the head of a cartel. So it's just like these lies just seem so blatant, but a lot of people are falling for them.
They are indeed. And Maduro was questioned about this recently. I just want to share this with everyone. Recent interview with Maduro. We're going to start right about here. Everyone, listen to this, and I'll kind of, tell you what he's saying in English here. But right now he says it's also an extremist card.
No pueden decir de Maduro que tiene armas de destrucción masiva. O pueden decir de mí lo que dijeron de Saddam Hussein. No pueden. Nadie les creería.
So Maduro was saying that they can't say that I have weapons of mass destruction, as they were able to say about Saddam Hussein. He said they bring up stories they invented.
Entonces sacan los relatos que han sacado hollywoodense, donde Maduro es el malo de la película y los buenos son ellos. Y entonces van a mandar a su ejército, los buenos de la película, catires así, rubios, fortachones, vienen a buscar al latino, al malo.
So he is saying that they make it seem like this is a Hollywood movie and Maduro is the villain and the United States government are the good guys coming to get the Latino, the bad guy.
Pero la verdad de la película, los pueblos la saben. Que el malo no es el que dicen ellos, que el malo es el que escribe la película, el que hace la película ya. Esos son los verdaderos malos, como lo hemos demostrado múltiplemente. Venezuela es un país libre, completamente libre del fenómeno del narcotráfico.
So he said that the real bad guys are the ones who are writing the script, not him. And he says that Venezuela is free, completely free from the phenomenon of drug trafficking free.
Libre. Aquí no hay una hectárea sembrada de plantaciones de hojas de coca. No hay laboratorios de cocaína. Y los que nos meten en la frontera, pim, pum, pa, nosotros mismos los destruimos.
He said that there are no cocaine labs in Venezuela.
Nuestras fuerzas policiales, nuestras fuerzas militares. No hay ni una hectárea de marihuana. Porque además la marihuana la producen ahora en territorio estadounidense de manera legal.
He said not even marijuana. And he also had mentioned that the people who tried, I guess, come across the border to bring cocaine in, he basically said that the military, the Venezuelan military handles that.
Una marihuana enriquecida.
Y la consumen hasta ciertos presidentes estadounidenses también.
No, y todo el consumo de todas las drogas en Estados Unidos.
Confesados por ellos mismos.
All right, and then they went on to talk about people smoking weed in the U.S. But the point that he made there, Dave, it's still crazy to me that people are falling for this again. You remember the Iraq War. I remember the Iraq War. We all remember they told us that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And of course, we know that was a big lie, right? So it's like the U.S. government, they come up with these excuses as to why we need to go to war with said country. You mentioned Gaddafi. One of the things they said about him was that they said Gaddafi was killing his own people. And they don't even have to have proof. All they have to do is just say it. And now they're telling you, they're saying, well, Maduro was bringing all these drugs into the United States, and as if that's the only place that drugs come from, as if it's more than what it's more than what it actually is. You mentioned Mexico. You're right. There is a lot that comes from Mexico, but also people produce and make drugs right here in the US. And so it's crazy to me that people are not just willing to use common sense. I don't even want to say do your own research, just use common sense. Haven't they done this before? Haven't they sold a war to you based on a lie before?
Yeah, and here I do think it is really obvious what's happening here, because again, the players, it's the another Trump administration, another push for regime change, and you got Marco Rubio calling the shots. And the things that Maduro says there, from the stuff that I've read from the DEA, from the UN's data, he's right when he says, there might be some coca plants or cocaine labs in Venezuela, but Venezuela is not known as a country that produces any cocaine, even though it borders Colombia. So that, these are important details when we're talking about this. So it's just so obvious to me, and I think to anyone who really pays any attention to this stuff, what this is really about. And of course, another big thing is that Venezuela sits on the biggest oil reserves in the entire world. No country has more oil than Venezuela. So I'm sure that's got something to do with it too. And that's actually, when Trump first came in, Rick Grenell, who I forget exactly what his position is in this administration, but he went over to Venezuela and he brought home some Americans who were held in jail there and engaged directly with the Maduro government. And apparently he's clashed with Rubio over this stuff. But Maduro has shown that he's willing to cooperate with the Trump administration. He's been cooperating on deportations, and he's still, they still are behind the scenes, as I understand, the two governments. And over the weekend, the defense minister announced that they were deploying additional troops to the coastal regions and to the border with Colombia to crack down on drug trafficking, almost as a way to say, like, it makes it maybe seem that they're trying to placate Trump to some extent here to see if they can avoid all this. So that's another thing here, is that it's not like Venezuela is asking for a fight, like not by any means. Even with the U.S. deploying all these warships off their coast, even with them bombing boats, they're still making it clear that they're willing to play ball with the U.S. And, we really just see this time and time again. I mean, we saw it with Iran. They attacked them while they were literally engaged in negotiations. And saw it today in Qatar, the bombing Hamas amid negotiations when they're literally meeting to discuss a U.S. ceasefire proposal. So it really just shows that, no matter what these countries do, like if there's an agenda, they're going to push ahead with it. And you mentioned the War Department rebranding. I mean, I agree. Like that's a much more appropriate and accurate name. And for our editorial purposes at antiwar.com, I love it because I could just write War Secretary Pete Hegseth. I think it flows very nicely. But it's also kind of a little scary, like the fact that he's just saying, "Yep, this is the War Department. We're all about war." And he just visited this Navy ship in the Caribbean, went to Puerto Rico. And they're saying that this is going to be open-ended, and we just don't really know what exactly they're going to do here. And it really seems like anything can happen.
Yes, it does. And the Oracle said the U.S. wants access to Venezuela's oil. Absolutely. It just always seems to be the countries that have resources that the U.S. government wants. Like that's the thing. And, they'll be the first to point at these countries and say that they're third world countries or they're poor. They don't have anything, but they're rich in resources. And so it just, you can't shrug off like that coincidence. And then another thing I want to point to when we talk about Venezuela, you mentioned that Maduro was willing to work with Donald Trump with the deportations, with immigration. And it just goes to show you that even when you try to work with the U.S. can still come after you if you have something that they want.
Yeah. It seems like, and actually another thing that happened recently was that the U.S. allowed Chevron to start pumping oil again in Venezuela, like right before all of this kind of started popping off. So they've sent some pretty mixed signals here to the Venezuelan government, but they're still going through with this. And for Rubio, I mean, this is really ideological. He's the son of Cuban immigrants, and we see that the Cuban exiles, in the U.S. politically, they really agitate for the continuing the embargo on Cuba, which is really a relic of the Cold War. And also, they agitate against the Venezuelan government because they're, allies of Cuba, and Nicaragua as well. It's what John Bolton, when he was in, he was a big part of the Venezuela, the first attempt at regime change and backing the coup in Juan Guaido. He dubbed Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba, he called them the Troika of tyranny. They even have a little name for it. So this is an agenda, it's also kind of an ideological thing for Rubio and kind of these people who have a pretty significant influence on the U.S. government.
And another thing I think is really important, he did send U.S. troops that way. So we can't, this is one of those times where I know some people have said with Russia and Ukraine, they said, well, they're not sending U.S. troops, so da-da-da. Donald Trump sent U.S. troops towards Venezuela immediately. So it just, you can't look at this and say this does not have an impact on Americans here at home. It really does. They are literally sending U.S. soldiers there. I think when this first started, Maduro said, I will have 4 million, or I think it's 4 million militia waiting for them in Venezuela. And I think Donald Trump was sending like 4,000 troops. You're essentially sending like American soldiers to their death, like 4,000 versus 4 million. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, it is a huge escalation and provocation what he's done here with these deployments. And that's the thing. I mean, I don't think they haven't sent a force that they can invade Venezuela with. And we've seen all these kind of mixed messages from U.S. officials in the Trump administration, which seems to be a theme of this administration. I think they kind of purposely throw out all this, conflicting information to just kind of confuse people and keep people on their toes. But there's this report from Axios, I think it was last week, that quoted all these different U.S. officials who were saying like different things about what it was about. What one official said, oh, this is definitely about drug trafficking. Another one said, oh, it could be Noriega Part 2, referring to the time the U.S. invaded Panama in 1989 to take out Manuel Noriega. You see the threats, but like, really, is it an invasion force? It's about, among those 4,000 troops is about 2,200 Marines. So they would be the only ones that would actually go on shore. And I mean, you would be sending 2,000 Marines to their death here. So what I could see happening, what seems pretty likely to me at this point, is U.S. drone strikes against maybe Maduro or against other government officials to put pressure on them. Because again, the narrative is, okay, we're here to go after cartels, and they also claim the whole Venezuelan government is a cartel. So it's like they have the justification, not that it's a real justification, but they have the pretext that they need if they want to start bombing people. I mean, and you saw with Trump, they bombed a boat. He claimed, oh, these people were narco terrorists, no evidence or anything. It's really bringing the war on terror to our hemisphere.
It's murder.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what they do in the middle. We've seen them do in the Middle East and across Africa. And now they're bringing it closer to home, which is pretty scary. And they claim Maduro's a narco terrorist, so that they have, this is what Israel does. Everybody's a terrorist. That means we can just kill them all. So yeah, I would be pretty nervous right now if I was, in Maduro's government.
And even when we talk about regime change, what we've seen before in the past and what continues to happen. So it is very apparent that they are going to try to find a way to overthrow Maduro. And when they do that, if we're following the playbook, they will install a leader of their choosing, a Western puppet. Oftentimes, as we've seen, when regime change does happen, the people in those countries are worse off after the regime change than they were before. And so for the people who take issue, if you're taking an issue with the immigration issue or the migrant issue, what do you think is going to happen? Where do you think those people are going to go? right? When they're facing that regime change, people will they'll either have to stay there and deal with the consequences, or they will try to leave. So this is why I always continue to say, like, even when it comes to immigration, let's look back and bring it back to the US global like policies that they've been implementing all over the world, how they just go into a country, overthrow a leader, have regime change, and the people there are suffering even more than they were before. I just want people to really think about this. Like, how would you think about it this way? Imagine if another country just came and overthrew the president of the United States. And then they said, we're going to assign a different person to be your president. That's what we do. It's like, it's crazy.
And if you look at Juan Guaido, who was the man that the U.S. declared was president of Venezuela back in 2019, at the time he had virtually no support in Venezuela. And then he went on to call for foreign intervention, to overthrow the government of Venezuela. And like, there was some polling, like what little support he had after he tried to do a coup on behalf of a foreign power was just gone. And now I think he's living in Florida. And and that's the thing, is that Guaido and these like so-called opposition leaders who are in the U.S., they have the ear of Rubio. They're telling him, oh, if you take out Maduro, we'll be able to get our guy in there and it'll all be great, which I don't think it'll go that great. And this isn't Iran. Like, I think this recent war against Iran, they were hoping that they could do a quick, decapitation of the government and regime change. And, they didn't really care. Like, I think if anything, Israel would want Iran to kind of plunge into chaos like Libya. But I don't think the U.S. would actually want that for Venezuela, because the migrants aren't going to go to Europe. They're going to come here. So, I mean, they have to have that in mind. But again, I think they just have the people who are really driving this are just selling them this idea that they could install a popular leader or something. But I just, as you said, when a foreign country is trying to impose its will on your country, generally people don't support that. And this was something, they knew that the sanctions on Venezuela that they imposed in 2019, when they really tightened them, they knew that was going to lead to more migration out of Venezuela. And another thing that they cite is this gang, Tren de Aragua, which is from Venezuela. And according to U.S. law enforcement, they've been active in the U.S. just in recent years. And that was a result of all the Venezuelans leaving Venezuela. Like they took advantage of the migrant crisis. So it's just like, you're going to do it all again. You're going to cause another migrant crisis by bombing Venezuela. I mean, it all seems so crazy. Like, they have to think of this stuff, but at the same time, what else are we seeing? What's the purpose of all this if they're not going to take it to that next level?
That's right. I want to pivot to Israel for just a second. There was a bus attack in Jerusalem, and the timing of all this is very suspicious, very suspicious. Benjamin Netanyahu, from what I understand, was supposed to testify yesterday. He was supposed to have an appearance. You guys know that he is sitting on a mound of charges. And I think what he's been doing is continuing these war efforts or attacks so that he doesn't have to face reality here. But in Jerusalem, it says here, this was Benjamin Netanyahu speaking at the scene of the Jerusalem shooting alongside the National Security Minister, Ben Gvir. This was the other day, and he is basically saying that they are now at war. Now, they have said that it was Palestinians showed up and started shooting at Israelis that were getting off of these buses here in Jerusalem. So he is not speaking in English, so I will read it for those of you who are listening while you're driving or working or whatever. But he's not speaking in English, so that tells you who he's speaking to, right? So he begins by saying, we're at war.
אנחנו במלחמה, מלחמה עצימה נגד הטרור בכמה חזיתות. ראשית אני רוצה לשלוח תנחומים למשפחות הנרצחים, וכמובן איחולי החלמה לפצועים.
So he says that they're facing a war on multiple fronts, and he wishes his condolences to the family members that were murdered.
כשאני אומר שאנחנו במלחמה עצימה בכמה חזיתות, יש לנו כמובן הצלחות אדירות נגד משטרי הטרור, נגד ארגוני הטרור, אבל המלחמה נמשכת גם ברצועת עזה, שבה נחריב את החמאס, כפי שהבטחנו ונשחרר את חטופינו, כל חטופינו, ולצערנו גם בירושלים. ביהודה ושומרון פעלנו בתקיפות רבה מאוד.
So he said they're taking very strong action in Jedua and Samara. Basically, what he's saying here is that they have been able to fight back against the terrorists. Of course, everyone's terrorist but them. And then goes on to say, but now we're still being attacked.
השב"כ וצה"ל סיכלו מאות, וגם משטרת ישראל, סיכלו מאות פיגועים השנה. אבל לצערנו לא בבוקר הזה. אנחנו עכשיו במרדף, בכיתור של הכפרים שמהם באו המרצחים.
So this is important. He says that the IDF and the IOF have been able, I guess, to wean off those attacks, but not that morning, he said. Everyone hold on to that, please, because once again, I find it very strange that just once again, all of a sudden, they're not around, right?
ואנחנו נשיג את כל מי שסייע באדם, כל מי ששילח אותם, ואנחנו ננקוט בצעדים קשים עוד יותר. אני רוצה לומר בצורה הכי ברורה, הרציחות הללו, הפיגועים הללו, בכל הגזרות, הם לא מרפים את ידינו. הם רק מגדילים את הנחישות שלנו, להשלים את המשימות שלקחנו על עצמנו. גם בעזה, גם ביהודה ושומרון, בכל מקום.
See, did everybody see what he just said there? He said, so we are going to basically attack even stronger. He goes on to say, this part is kind of important. In Gaza, Judea, Samaria, and everywhere. So everyone hold on to that part where he says everywhere.
ביהודה ושומרון, בכל מקום. אנחנו נלחמים בטרור, במשטר הטרור של החות'ים, באיראן שמגבה את כולם, בעזה, בלבנון, בחיזבאללה, בכל הגזרות. אנחנו לא מרפים וגם לא נרפה. אנחנו נעצים את הפעולות שלנו, ואנחנו נשיג את כל המטרות שלנו.
He said they're going to intensify their operation. So, David, to me, this basically was Benjamin Netanyahu's way of saying they're probably going to go in even heavier in the West Bank now. First of all, what do you think about this attack that happened in Jerusalem the other day? I just find it strange that once again, all of a sudden, the IDF and the IOF just happened to not be present on the same day that Benjamin Netanyahu was supposed to go to trial.
Yeah, I mean, it is a convenient coincidence for Netanyahu. I see no reason to think it's like a false flag or anything like that. But as you said, is there potential for a stand down or something? I guess that's possible. But at the same time, this is, he's sitting there, standing there next to Ben Gvir, who the Israeli national security minister, who has been trying to provoke the Palestinians, basically since he's been in that position. He's constantly going to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, bringing a big group of Israeli settlers to, which is a huge provocation to the Palestinians, to the Muslims in the region. And of course, we've seen this increase in violence in the West Bank, the both Israeli military raids and Israeli settler attacks and murders and terrorism. I mean, just about as bad as it can get. And I've been surprised that we haven't seen more. That it's not like a third intifada happening in the West Bank. I think a lot of Palestinians realize that any kind of armed attack is just going to provoke more Israeli, they're just going to step things up. So I think this is exactly what Ben Gvir, Netanyahu, Smotrich wanted, so they can, use it as an excuse to escalate even more in the West Bank. I mean, in the northern West Bank, in the refugee camps in Jenin and Tulkarem, they've basically destroyed the place. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been displaced there, and that would be, if that was happening independent of what's happening in Gaza, independent of the genocidal destruction that we've seen in Gaza. I mean, that would be in all the headlines about Israel and Palestine would be about what's happening in the West Bank. So it's what these guys want, whether however it happened. This is clearly playing into their agenda, and Smotrich too, he put out a statement saying that these West Bank villages have to be turned into Rafah and Beit Hanun, referring to the cities in Gaza that are just completely demolished and rubble. So it's certainly what they wanted to push their, takeover of the West Bank.
Here's why I think it could be a false flag, right? In other words, here's why I think Israel could be behind it. I'm thinking about all the checkpoints that they have in Israel. Like I know, a number of people who have been there. Kim Iverson has explained all the checkpoints she had to go through. Ta-Nehisi Coates talked about all the checkpoints that you have to go through. So I'm just trying to figure out, how were they able to get through those checkpoints with weapons and then make their way all the way to the buses? I guess I'm just trying to figure out like how that would happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, I really don't know. I don't know enough about that specific area of Jerusalem, to say, but I know it's in what is considered, Israeli occupied East Jerusalem, right near West Bank settlements and everything. But yeah, I mean, you're right that the Palestinians, traveling there, they have to go through all these checkpoints, and they wouldn't just be able to bring a rifle along or something. So, that is true. Maybe there could have been some kind of stand down or something, but we really don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's just one of those things. I'm just looking at the timing of everything. And of course, Benjamin Netanyahu makes it seem like he's such a victim. I just want to show everybody what else was supposed to happen. And Dr. Simon Gadek said, what a coincidence. Netanyahu won't testify at trial today in wake of Jerusalem shooting attack. So that was supposed to happen. And he has managed to be able to stay out of court. Right. And he's supposed to go there. He just continues to continue war. Rather, it's not even like just attacking Gaza. I feel like he keeps finding ways to attack other countries just so he can continue to stay in power, because the reality is they're not going to try to vote him out of office while all of this is going on. And then also, from what I've heard from people who have been to Israel, is that a lot of the Israelis are to the right of Benjamin Netanyahu, or they feel as though he's not even going far enough. So it really just, it makes you wonder. It's really crazy. But what I noticed from corporate media, and I'm sure you probably noticed this as well, was that the way they talked about the 7 Israelis that were killed in that attack compared to the way that they speak about, I will say, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. I don't believe it's just 50,000 people. The way they speak about the deaths of the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians is very telling.
Yeah. I mean, for what I do for antiwar.com, every day I write kind of an update on Gaza, of the violence. And I mean, it's every single day that I see pictures and videos of women and children who were like shredded apart or shot. Or just today, I did a story and there was a young boy who was shot and killed while he was trying to get aid. And you just, you don't ever hear about them. It is something. There was like some Israeli member of the Knesset, I forget his name, but he said something in some news show, like, basically, we've learned that we can kill 100 Palestinians a day and nobody in the world will care. And that's true. I mean, they just get away with it every day. I mean, one of the reasons why I just cover it, I cover the health ministry because they put out a number every day. So I cover it. I think it's just worth tracking it, because it is like, these are people being killed, being murdered with our tax dollars. And yeah, I mean, even some of these most heinous attacks, the one recently, the double tap strike in the Nasser hospital where they killed 5 journalists. I mean, that got a lot of attention because it was during a broadcast. I mean, it was filmed for the whole world to see. But even that, like, compared to the what we've seen, all the statements about the Israelis that were killed at the bus stop, there's certainly a difference there. I mean, even the news agencies like Reuters, like, their cameraman was killed. Their camera was the one that they claimed was a Hamas camera, yet they still published without like questioning the Israeli claim that they bombed a Hamas camera. So that's really shameful. Same thing with the AP. Like, they had a report that was good because it detailed how Israel lied, but it wasn't, the way that they cover it. Like, they're not sticking up for their people who are being killed, the people who literally work for them, who are being killed in Gaza. Yeah, it's really infuriating to see that.
Yeah, and there was another attack, and this one's a little bit shaky. Some news outlets confirmed that the flotilla boat that Greta Thunberg was on was attacked, was hit by a drone strike. And some other outlets are saying that's not the boat that she was on. I'm not really sure. There's different things being said there, but either way, there was a drone attack on one of the flotilla boats. There are 50 of them that are headed towards Gaza. And I just kind of feel like there are Americans on those boats, once again. And I feel like corporate media is just like, yeah, whatever. And I feel like our government is just like, yeah, whatever. Like it's not even happening. Like, how is that even legal? Like, isn't that against international law for them to just have a drone attack on one of those flotilla boats?
Yeah. And they did it earlier this year. I forget the name of the boat, but it was one of the first flotilla boats. It was off the coast of Malta. So it was in Europe that they drone bombed this flotilla boat, and nobody cared about that. And then actually right before we started, I saw, I think it was Dropsite News tweeted that there's another attack, a second attack on one of the flotilla boats off Tunisia. And as I understand, the first attack, it's the boat that Greta Thunberg is on, but she was on shore at the time because they're in Tunisia. So thank God nobody was killed or hurt in that attack. And it's not clear exactly what happened. One of the crew members, the one that there was actually a video of him, like he was going to like look at something and then you hear an explosion. He said it looked like a small drone dropped something. And then there was a video of like some kind of incendiary device being dropped on the boat and then an explosion happening. But yeah, I mean, this is like, I don't even know like what the word is for this kind of behavior that these attacks and the world just, the US just not even saying anything about it. It just doesn't matter. And the people who are on these boats are risking their lives, especially this big flotilla, because I mean, what is Israel going to do if 50 boats are going into Gaza? They're not going to be able to raid every single one of them. So, I mean, I think we're going to see more of this.
That's exactly what I was wondering. I'm like, how are they going to be able to stop all 50 boats at the same time?
Yeah. And I know back in, what was it? I think 2010, there was, I forget the exact number. I should know, but I want to say like 6 boats or something that were trying to break the blockade on Gaza. And they were raided by the IDF. And in one of the boats, 9 Turkish activists were killed. So, there's this similar things have happened before and did not end well. But yeah, I mean, you see what Israel does every day, the starvation. I mean, people are starving to death. There's famine that Israel has imposed on Gaza. I mean, if they can get away with that, I mean, it's hard to imagine there's anything that they could do that would get the U.S. to stop giving them the bombs and the weapons to do all this stuff. Even bombing Qatar, which Trump is trying to claim he was not, privy to the decision or anything, which I mean, I think that's very hard to believe. But anyway, it's just, yeah, like what they can, it really seems like they can get away with anything.
Well, Dave, you've been doing great work. Where can people follow what you're doing?
Yeah, so our website is antiwar.com, which is where you could find my news coverage. That's basically my job, is kind of following the news and writing articles to cover things. And we also have a viewpoint section where we have great opinion pieces kind of from our writers, and we link to stuff from other sites as well. So a lot of content at antiwar.com that we publish every day. And then my show is called Anti-War News, which if you're on YouTube, you could go subscribe to the channel. And also follow me on X at DeCamp Dave. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Dave, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Bye. All right, ladies and gents, that was Dave DeCamp. Guys, make sure you're following antiwarnews.com. They do really great work, especially if you want to. There is a geopolitics story that was just published by corporate media, and you kind of want to see if there's more out there. Check out antiwarnews.com. They do really, really good work. We're about to get into the breaking news that happened earlier today. Also with Israel, it's crazy. You can't keep up with all of this. We're living in like a episode of the Twilight Zone or something. It's just crazy. But we are going to get into this attack, this strike from Israel on Qatar. We're going to dive into all of that. And I'm going to tell you what I think really happened, despite what the US government is telling you. We're going to put all the pieces to this puzzle together. Let's go ahead and say hello to some of the people in the chat. We'll shout out patrons, and then we'll dive into the breaking news story. Cloudness, hello and happy birthday to your mom. Cloudness says, happy birthday to Mama Dukes and little brother, and salute Sabby Sabs. Happy Taco Tuesday. Be one to everyone in the chat. Yes, it is Taco Tuesday. Although I made lasagna for tonight, a high protein, low calorie lasagna, which I didn't think was possible, but it is. I'll tell you guys about that on call-in. Mumu says, I saw Matt Taibbi's latest tweet, and I think that his silence on Gaza is because his followers are for Palestinians' freedom and he's not. He makes money from left spaces and doesn't want to lose that. I don't know what's going on with Matt Taibbi, but it's really sad. Thank you for your super chat, David. FYI, Matt Taibbi used to talk about Palestine. Search Far Gone in 30 Seconds for a September 2001 article he wrote condemning CNN for framing Palestinians as terrorists after September 11. I miss that, Matt. Ooh, okay. I'll have to check that out, David. Thank you for letting me know about that. Interesting. Thank you for the super chat, Tim. It should be called Department of Colonialism. Thank you, Pine Martin. Little Narco Rubio is a gunboat terrorist. Yeah, he's a psycho, huh? And shout out to Miranda Rios for being a member for 7 months. Give Miranda a big whoop, whoop, whoopity whoop, whoop. All right, let's go ahead and shout out Sabby patrons, and we're going to get into this breaking story, ladies and gents. Hey. Thank you to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories, fam. They are ultimate. Don't forget about the Sabinators. There's Sabsters. There are also Sabbies. I give a lot of special attention to Sabbies. I think I need to come up with things for the other ones as well. And we also have members. All of their names are listed here. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. That's who all those people are. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for LB. LB, what is up? Thank you. You know, I saw that earlier and I wondered, I'm like, is that the LB I used to know? I knew a guy named LB, and he used to play fantasy football. It was one of the fantasy football peeps, and fantasy football is his own thing. And I don't know if any of you have ever played fantasy football, but it really is like just its own thing. You know, we kind of have our own mentality once you go into fantasy football mode. But he won one time. And that was when I was still living in South Carolina, and people used to put a lot of money into that fantasy football pot. Now I play for like, what is it? 25? Are we playing 25 this year? I can't remember if it's $25 or $50, but people used to put a lot in back then. So like if you won, you would win like $5,000. Like it was a big deal. But I wonder if it's that LB. Probably not. Anywho, tonight's theme is Everybody Plays the Fool, just like the song by Aaron Neville. Aaron Neville. I love that song. Some of you oldies but goodies, you know that song. You know what I'm talking about. I think a couple of people have remade that song as well. I mean, what else is new? If you have not done so, ladies and gents, smash that like button. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. Don't forget, we are doing call-in tonight after the live stream. And we're going to go ahead and get into this first story. Everybody plays a fool. It was breaking news Tuesday morning that Israel struck Qatar. I mean, we're going way off course now. Israel struck Qatar. And it was very interesting considering the fact that there are current negotiations, or were current negotiations that were happening with Hamas, Qatar, and Israel, where Hamas leadership was meeting in Doha in Qatar. And it just seems kind of, I don't know, a coincidence that Israel decides to strike Qatar when these negotiations for a ceasefire are supposed to happen. Let's go ahead and get into it, folks. I called BS from the moment I heard this.
This is CNN breaking news.
All right, we do have breaking news. We are getting reports of explosions in Doha, the capital of Qatar, and beginning to see pictures coming back from that capital city. And we are getting word that this was part of a targeted Israeli attack. Let's get right to CNN's Jeremy Diamond in Jerusalem with the very latest. Jeremy, what have you learned?
John, this is an absolutely extraordinary moment that we are witnessing right now. A very large plume of smoke above the Qatari capital of Doha, and paired with that, an Israeli military statement saying that they have, quote, conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization, end quote. I have just gotten off the phone with an Israeli official who confirmed to me that that statement is indeed about that very same blast in Doha, meaning that the Israeli military, not even Israel's intelligence service, but its military, actually conducted a strike in Qatar targeting Hamas's leadership.
Pause. And this right here was a big tell for me, ladies and gents. This part right here, when he said that it wasn't even Israel's intelligence, it was their military. A precise strike, which means they knew exactly where they were. And if they can make precise strikes on them, then imagine what they can do with their intelligence. Israeli intelligence can pick up any and every little thing, which means to tell you that when they are choosing to strike a building or a tent, they know that there's kids in that building. They can see what's there. This is what I've been trying to tell people for the longest time. And we have some of the soldiers have come out about this as well. Some American soldiers have also talked about this, that their intelligence is so superior that they can even look down on your shoe. If you're far away, they can tell if there's a crumb on your shoe. They know exactly who they're hitting. And they've been knowing, right? But it also told me something else. It tells me that, again, they knew that they were going to be there. They knew that they were going to be there because there were those negotiation talks that were supposed to be had. And then that also tells me that this was a setup. This was a trap. This is why when I first heard about these peace talks that were about to happen, this is why I didn't cover it. Because every time I hear about there's a ceasefire, a possibility, there's negotiation talks, it turns out to be just a farce. Because Israel is going to do what it wants to do. I also don't believe that the U.S. government even wants any type of negotiation either. I believe they're just telling that to the American people to get everybody to calm down. I fully believe, and I said this under the Biden administration, and I say it under the Trump administration, I fully believe that the U.S. government, regardless of political party that is in the White House, I believe that the U.S. government made a decision, and their decision is that they are going to back Israel all the way. Regardless if Israel breaks international law, they are going to support them. Even if that means lying to you and telling you that they're working on peace negotiations, and behind the scenes, they've already decided to do something else. Public Enemy had a song long time ago called Can't Trust It. You shouldn't trust it. What you have to remember, what's said in front of the camera and what's said behind the scenes are two different things. Also, this is in violation of international law. Israel implemented a strike in Qatar. And another question you need to ask yourself, how is it that when Iran and Israel were going back and forth and they were striking each other, how is it that Qatar was able to shoot down missiles that Iran was sending, over like within their airspace? They were able to shoot those down. They were able to shoot down the drones, shoot down the missiles. But it just so happens that the day that Israel decides to strike in Qatar, air defense is down. Guys. Unfortunately, some people are falling for this. That's why I said everybody plays the fool. Let's continue.
And of course, the moment in time at which this is happening, Amid this renewed push to negotiate a ceasefire and hostage release deal by the United States, President Trump putting a lot of political capital behind that. And now Israel seems to have targeted the very Hamas leadership that is in the midst of those negotiations. Doha, the Qatari capital, is where several senior Hamas leaders are currently based and have been based throughout much of this war in Gaza, namely Hamas's leader, Khalil al-Hayya. Khalil al-Hayya has been not only Hamas's leader in the wake of the killing of Yahya Sinwar, but he has also been the chief negotiator, engaged not only through the mediators, but also at times with U.S. officials in negotiations over the future of the war in Gaza, the future of the fate of the hostages being held inside the Gaza Strip throughout these nearly 2 years of war.
And this is why you need to watch independent media, because he's not going to tell you what I just told you, right? So he's here on CNN. They're not going to allow him to say, yeah, I just told you all these things about the negotiations that were supposed to take place today. And then all of a sudden, Israel strikes Qatar while these negotiations are supposed to take place. It almost seems like a trap. He's not going to tell you that. If he tried to tell you that, CNN would probably boot him off the air, and that would be the end of his job. But this is where, like, those of us who are viewers, we have to start using common sense. Because I think a lot of the things that Israel does, they do kind of put this out into the ether. I don't feel like these things are even done in the dark anymore. It's so obvious. That's how sloppy Israel has started to get. It's so obvious that they're just putting it all out there. It's like, oh, okay, let's just do this on the day there's negotiations. And that brings me to another point. The fact that Qatar's air defenses were down. The fact that Israel decided to strike during these negotiations in Doha, that leads me to believe that this was a coordinated effort between the U.S. government, Israel, and Qatar. I believe Qatar was a part of this too. Now I'll go into you a little bit more reasoning behind that, but let's continue here with the video a little bit.
We are also learning via Tal Shalev that the targets do indeed include Khalil al-Hayya, who I was just talking about, and another official by the name of Jabarin. It's unclear as of now what the results of this strike were, whether or not Hamas's leadership in Doha has been killed, who has been killed, whether any of them are injured. We simply do not know at this stage. But the reporting this hour, John, is sure to be an earthquake in this region, not only for the prospects of negotiating a ceasefire agreement to end the war in Gaza, to secure the release of the hostages, but also as it relates to Israel's relations with these Gulf countries. Although Israel does not have official formal diplomatic ties with Qatar, Qatar has been the key mediator in these ceasefire negotiations throughout the war. It has been a key partner in trying to reach some kind of an agreement here. And this will certainly damage those relations as well going forward.
I want to put a little more context.
Let me pause here because I'm going to give you a little bit of the history of Qatar and the U.S. as well. I know I was saying Qatar. I always want to say Qatar. It's Qatar. But I think we need to think outside the box here. Don't you think it's a little bit strange that they weren't able to shoot down those strikes, but they were able to shoot down the ones from Iran? Don't you think it's a little bit weird that their air defenses were just happened to be down that day? Qatar is basically another U.S. military base. They have the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. You really believe that they wouldn't have been in the know with this, that they weren't in on this? Because I think they were in on this. I don't think this was just an Israel decision. I don't think this is just a Donald Trump administration decision. I think Qatar is in on this as well. I think the negotiation was never real to begin with. One of the things I noticed about this particular negotiation, it seemed as though it was kind of vague. It wasn't as detailed as other ceasefire negotiations prior to this one. So I was just kind of like, yeah, this seems pretty weird. Don't forget that Hamas leadership also said that this negotiation was basically for Israel and what they want, but it was still very vague. So this was just a setup. I really do feel like we were watching a movie, and you think you're going to meet one thing, but it's basically you're walking into your doom. Now, those Hamas officials were not killed, from what I understand. As of right now, they were not killed. Let's continue a little bit more, and then you're going to see what the press secretary, what they had to say, what Trump had to say, and what Israel had to say. And we're going to put all the pieces together.
Text around this, Jeremy, because this is an extraordinary event, and I mean that quite literally. I don't believe there is any precedent for an Israeli military attack on Qatar, at least not that I can remember, and I think the Israelis will say it's not on Qatar, but it certainly is in Qatar. It was an air attack which had targets inside the capital city. So that in and of itself, as you say, is something we just haven't seen. And also the targeting of Hamas leadership fits a pattern now that we have seen from Israel over the last, 18 months. The assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah inside Lebanon. Yahya Sinwar, the operational leader of Hamas inside Gaza itself. But now to go after the Hamas officials who openly operate inside Qatar, a very significant development. What might that mean for negotiations?
Listen, it was in the first days of the war that Israel's security establishment and its political leadership made very clear that at the end of the day, whether it would take months, whether it would take years, they would go after every single member of Hamas whom they ultimately deemed responsible for the horrific attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023. And we have watched them tick down that list over the course of nearly 2 years of war, both inside the Gaza Strip, where they killed Yahya Sinwar, who was Hamas's, the primary architect of that October 7th massacre, ultimately rose to become Hamas's overall leader, both inside and outside of the Gaza Strip, whether it was Ismail Haniyeh, whom the Israeli Mossad killed in a special operation inside the Iranian capital of Tehran, or when you were talking about Iranian proxies outside of Israel, like, as you said, the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah. I mean, Israel has been going down its enemies list over the course of the last 2 years, and this certainly appears to be a continuation of those efforts, and also making clear from the Israeli side that they do not see a distinction between the political leaders of Hamas, the leaders of Hamas's political wing, and the leaders of Hamas's military wing. And this is yet another example of that, and a way that the Israelis are demonstrating that not only is no one outside of their reach, but that they will, go to any lengths, including striking inside of a country like Qatar, which has been a reliable mediator between the Israeli and the Palestinian side, that they will go and conduct these strikes. And again, just to focus on the
We'll stop him here because he reiterates himself quite a bit, but no longer a mediator now. No longer a mediator now. I want to go ahead and bring up this here from Max Blumenthal. This is interesting. This is what I want to tell you guys about. Max Blumenthal said 2 days ago, Trump issued a short proposal and warning designed to compel Hamas exiled leadership to gather in Doha. Hamas said at the time, it looks like Trump's proposal was written by the Israelis. When Hamas met today in Doha, U.S. air defenses in Qatar stood down. See what I was talking about? Israeli officials have told the Jerusalem Post that the U.S. greenlit the decapitation strike. The negotiations have reached their death knell as Israel moves towards its final solution in Gaza, and the Trump administration has once again shown its true face as a subsidiary of the Zionist regime. Let's go down here, and I just want to show you this one right here that he shared. Everybody read this with me. Israeli officials told the Post that the U.S. knew about the attack beforehand and gave it the green light. Doesn't that sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen? Didn't we hear this when Israel decided to strike Iran? That the U.S. gave the green light, of course. And it's another thing, like I said before, you guys, Qatar has the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. You guys really think that the U.S. government didn't give the thumbs up for this to happen before it happened? It goes on to say here, the U.S. Embassy in Doha has issued a shelter-in-place order for all U.S. citizens. Guys, they were all in on it. They were all in on it. So Donald Trump gave Israel the thumbs up, and I would not be surprised if Qatar was in on it as well. And some people are falling for this. And I got to tell you guys again, like the song, everybody plays the fool sometimes, right? I've been informed that this is not originally by Aaron Neville. It's originally by the main ingredient. So we've been told this, right? Everybody plays the fool sometimes. But I'm asking you, when it comes to foreign policy, not to do so. Here's another one that gives me pause. This is from First Blood. The Qatari air defenses were not activated. The U.S. air defenses were not activated. In other words, there is coordination. I really do believe Qatar was in on this. I don't think this was just Israel's decision. And I want you to hear what the press secretary said here about this strike.
Regarding the Israeli strike in Doha, how much time or how much of a heads up did the U.S. get, and does the president support the strike?
Sure. Well, I have a statement to read for all of you with respect to the Israeli strike in Doha, and here it is. This morning, the Trump administration was notified by the United States military that as Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar.
Pause. There is no very unfortunately, because it was all a part of the plan. Now, you see, they can't keep their story straight because she is making it seem as though, oh gosh, it was just unfortunate that it happened to be there. But Israel already told the Post that the president greenlit the operation. So it's unfortunate. They knew about it. This was a part of the plan. And I don't believe there was any real negotiation that was going to take place. They can't even get their story straight.
Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did.
Pause. What did she just say? What did she just say?
However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack.
Of the impending attack. Ding, 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 ding. So of course they did it with U.S. permission. So they knew it was coming. And I say this because Qatar right now is saying that they are no longer going to pursue negotiations with Israel after the strike. But I'm trying to explain to everybody this is all a part of the theater. This is what they wanted you to believe. They wanted you to think that we were trying to have these negotiations and Israel just wouldn't behave. And out of nowhere, they decided to strike in Qatar. So now we can't trust Israel. So we're not going to choose to have any type of negotiations. It's theater. The script was already written. And it was crazy how many people were falling for this. And I was like, really, guys? Seems a little too neatly packaged, don't you think? They knew the attack was coming. And if they had a problem with the attack coming, why didn't they put up their air defenses? They can't wash their hands clean in this one either.
Which he did. The president views Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the United States and feels very badly about the location of this attack. President Trump wants all of the hostages in Gaza and the bodies of the dead released, and this war to end now. President Trump also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants to make peace. And
imagine talking about making peace after you just decided to strike during a negotiation process. when the negotiation was supposed to happen. So I'm just here to, again, just shrug off the foolishness, right? They are telling you that he wants the hostages out. He wants to make peace. Well, there were supposed to be negotiations happening so that could happen. So if they really wanted the hostages out, if they really cared so much about those hostages, as I've said before, they would have had serious negotiations and Israel wouldn't have broken the ceasefire multiple times. As I've told you, they don't really care about getting those damn hostages back. If that was your main goal, why would you try to sabotage a negotiation and issue a strike, an attack in Qatar when these negotiations are supposed to happen? And Caroline, she's just a puppet. She's no different than Corinne Jean-Pierre. She's no different than Sarah Huckabee when they all stood up there behind that podium and they lied to cover the current administration. I'm sure she'll write a book too.
Quickly. President Trump believes this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. The president also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone should listen to those types of promises. Now I want to show you what Benjamin Netanyahu said, because like I said, they can't even get their story straight. He says, today's action against the top terrorist chieftains of Hamas was wholly independent Israeli operation. Israel initiated it, Israel conducted it, and Israel takes full responsibility. Now, isn't this the opposite of what she just told you? When she just explained to you that the president contacted Qatar to let them know of the impending attack and gave the green light for the operation to happen? They're all over the place. They can't even get on the same damn page, and they think that we just, for whatever reason, don't have eyes and ears. And then what was really interesting, when you look at the reactions, like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, right? Listen to what he says. Now, he claims not to know. Listen to this.
Second question for anyone. As we were all driving and walking in here, Israel struck Qatar to take out Hamas leadership. I'm curious if any of you think that whoever survives there should be evicted from Qatar.
I don't know anything about that development. That's news to me. I've been a little busy the last couple hours, but we'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, look, I was in Israel myself a few weeks ago in early August. It's a very dangerous time there, and they have enemies encamped around them, and they're trying to bring that to a peace as well. But Hamas, by anybody who looks at this reasonably, and in my view, this is my personal view, that Hamas has to be eradicated. You've got to remove that threat on the immediate border, frankly, within the bounds of Israel.
Second question.
So he doesn't know what happened. He had just heard about it during this apparent press conference here, but he's already talking about what needs to happen. I also find it interesting. He doesn't know about it. I knew about it. You're in DC. You don't know about it? Come on, man. Come on, man. Another one here that I think we need to dive into. What is the relationship between the United States and Qatar? Because I found something very interesting. When you look back at the way that Qatar received its independence and what happened that following year. So check this out. I don't know if you guys know a lot about Qatar. Guns, oil, and education. Qatar's evolving relationship in the United States, or with the United States. Check this out. Let me make it a little bit bigger for the people in the back. The state of Qatar declared independence from Great Britain September 3rd, 1971. And the U.S. recognized it 2 days later, establishing diplomatic relations in March of 1972. Peep this, fam. See if we can highlight this here. The American embassy in Doha was launched the following year, and the first resident U.S. ambassador to Qatar presented his credentials in 1974. So, long story short, Qatar received its independence in 1971. And the next year, the U.S. government already installed an American embassy in Qatar. So Qatar has been a puppet of the U.S. since 1972. Just another one. Natalie says it's an American vassal. There you go. AJ says sounds like a puppet government. Mm-hmm. Look how quickly they implemented that American embassy in Qatar. Didn't take them long, did it? And there's more, because I like getting into all of this. Let me pull this back up here. The relationship has developed over decades, especially in the defense sector. Qatar hosts U.S. Central Command Forward Headquarters and has supported North Atlantic Treaty Organization and U.S. military operations in the Arabian Peninsula area. Bilateral relations are strengthened by person-to-person exchanges and economic interests. Hundreds of Qataris come to the U.S. for university study, and 6 U.S. universities have branch campuses in Doha, Texas A&M, Cornell, Georgetown, Carnegie Mellon, Virginia Commonwealth, and Northwestern. So you guys see, this is a business relationship here. On the economic side, the U.S. is Qatar's largest foreign investor and source of imports. 120 U.S. companies have offices in Qatar, particularly in the oil, gas, and petrochemical sectors. So Qatar is just an extension of the U.S. This is how we really got to look at it. I say the same thing about Israel. I told you Israel is just basically a U.S. military base. So now that I told you that, would you really believe that Qatar was not in on this? They knew. When we talk about that largest military base in Qatar, here it is right here. Al Udeid, I hope that's the way you pronounce it, Al Udeid Air Base. It is the largest military installation in the Middle East. The largest. So they know what's up. They've been in on the game, guys. They've been in on it. And look at this. Let me just make this a little bit larger here, because we don't really talk about Qatar that much, I feel like. But it is situated west of Doha, that military air facility, situated west of Doha. In addition to Qatari Air Force, the base is home to numerous military assets and coalition forces. The base is important for deepening cooperation with U.S. military forces. So that's all this is. That's all this is. And that's why, and I just want to say something here before we come back to that other part. This is why when people make the argument, why aren't the other Arab countries coming to the Palestinians' defense? Why aren't they pushing back against Israel? Because they're puppets of the West. That's the same thing for Jordan. That's the same thing for Turkey. Turkey be all over the place sometimes. That's the same thing for the UAE. Saudi Arabia, they sometimes they friends with the US, sometimes they dipping their toe into bricks. Saudi Arabia just looks out for its own interest, basically. They ain't trying to come save nobody else. They may not like to hear that, but that's the reality. Puppets. That's what they are. And that's why and that's the big problem. And that's why the Palestinians, for the most part, with the exception of Iran and Yemen, that's why they're on their own. Another part I wanted to add here. Let me see. This part. Without entering into a contract at the time, Qatar gave the U.S. access to the Al Udeid base in 2000. After the Americans took over as base managers in 2001, Doha and Washington inked an agreement in December of 2002 that officially recognized the U.S. military's presence at the Al Udeid facility. So this has been a thing. And, people don't like to hear this, but I have to show you this and I have to tell you this so that you can understand why they are not trying to help the Palestinian people. And also, regardless of what they say in interviews, you need to keep this in mind as well. They are puppets of the West. Now, this brings up a question too about Al Jazeera. And I'm going to check this tomorrow. How is Al Jazeera going to cover this story? Because Al Jazeera is basically a Qatar outlet as well. Are they going to tell you what I just told you about how Israel, the US government, and Qatar were all in on this together, and this was a setup and this was a trap? We'll have to wait and see. Al Jazeera can be good on some things, but also, I hate to say it, but they puppets of the West too. So once we start to see all of these things and we see the connections, then we understand why things are happening the way that they are. Everybody plays the fool sometimes, but hopefully we can wake people up a little bit over here. I'm pretty sure the gray zone is probably going to have a lot to say about this. They'll probably be able to tell you even more than me because they've been, to the Middle East. So if they didn't put out, I don't think they put out a show today. If they didn't put out a show today, they probably will on Wednesday or Thursday, I would imagine. And they'll probably be able to go even deeper than this. So stay tuned. Let's go to some of the comments, ladies and gents. I think we have Rumble rants. Can we get those? And then I'll go to the comments on YouTube. Hey, hey, hey. Ba, 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 ba. Thank you for the Rumble Rants goo. They are saying Israeli jets were fueled in Qatar before the strike. Keep in mind how Qatar was so upset when Iran struck U.S. base and not so much when Israel struck in the civilian area in Qatar. Yep. And thank you for this one, Goo81. Arabs, wake up and remove your dictators. This is proof that no matter how good your government ass kissing is, you will never make the emperor happy, according to Professor Morandi. Yeah, man. U.S. government, man. I'm telling you. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Depth of grand imperialism. There you go. There you go. Okay. We're going to pivot away from foreign policy for just a second. We will come back to it at the end of the show. And we're going to focus a little bit on some domestic policy. The theme is everybody plays the fool. Have you been fooled about what's happening in this New York City mayor race? Zohran Mandami had an interview recently with Al Sharpton on MSNBC. And I gotta be honest, some of the things that were said are giving people pause. Let's start with some of the positives. We're going to start with the economic discussion that he had with Al Sharpton. And I do want to remind you again, if you don't know who Al Sharpton is, you got to understand again, he is also a puppet for the establishment. Yeah, Al Sharpton has done some good things in the day in regards to like civil rights and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, he decided to put the activism aside and he decided to take like this corporate job and blend in with the establishment. Now, every now and then you'll still see him out there marching in the streets, but he made a decision that he was going to go along with the corporations and the establishment. It's important that you understand that when you watch this interview. So let's go ahead and get into the economic part. Again, Zohran Mandami is running for mayor of New York City right now. He is leading the way. I don't think that's at the timestamp. 1 second. Right now, he is leading the race, excuse me. And if the election were today, he would definitely win. So that's kind of where Zohran is right now. So let's start with the economic part of this conversation. I think we're right about here. Just want to double check that timestamp. 53. Okay. Yeah, I think I want you guys to hear this first. Again, knowing what I told you about Al Sharpton, just remember he is a part of the establishment. So let's start with the economy, and then we're going to get to the part of the conversation that is making everybody, a lot of people that support him, upset.
Freeze, you mentioned free buses, city-owned groceries that made you popular with some working New Yorkers. but not so popular with real estate developers and the financial class. You were the only mayoral candidate to march alongside Martin Luther King III and I on our march on Wall Street about DEI on last week as we call for economic justice for all New Yorkers and all Americans. But right now, the top...
Pause. I just have to say this. Martin Luther King III is nothing like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Okay, because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. aligned a little bit more with socialism, was not also just focused on integration, but also was focused on class, which he started to talk about before he was assassinated. But Martin Luther King III here, very corporatist, very much establishment. I just have to put that out there. Let's continue.
1% earners in the city pay 40% of the city's income taxes, according to the Empire Center for Public Policy. How do you bring these wealthy residents to the table as mayor? Stop them from saying they're leaving, going to Florida, because we need that tax revenue to pay for some of the things you're talking about. How do you...
Pause. Here's the first problem, right? So here's the thing. People use that threat here in Massachusetts. They said that if you guys pass the millionaire tax, all the millionaires are going to leave. They didn't. They didn't. But two, he said, what's stopping them from going to Florida? What's stopping people that live in New York that are not millionaires from moving to Florida? Hell, New Yorkers been moving to Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia for years. I know. I went to high school in North Carolina. So I saw this happen a lot, where a lot of the people that I would meet, they were from New York, New Jersey, like Massachusetts. So, and they weren't millionaires. So it's just like, this brings up another issue where you are relying on, he's like, well, we need that tax revenue from them. Why do you need that tax revenue? You need it because the way the system is designed, the way that it is set up. This is another reason why I continue to push for a public bank. We need a public bank in every state. It can't just be North Dakota. That's one thing. But two, of all the money that is produced in New York City, there really is no reason why people should have to struggle in New York, but they do. It has become a place for the rich. I know, because I'm right outside of Boston. Boston has also become that as well. It is a trend, right? But this idea that how are you going to win over the wealthy people because, oh God, we don't want to lose them. Man, let them leave. What is this? I don't see this argument with how are you going to, hold on to the poor people because they're being evicted and we don't want to lose them. No, it's just all about we need the wealthy people to stay. So again, Al Sharpton is showing you exactly who he works for.
You pay for it if they're gone.
Well, the first thing I have to say is I was proud to be the only candidate for mayor at that march. And I was proud because some of the chants at that march, they were asking, is the dream alive?
Right.
Is Dr. King's dream still alive? And he asked the question decades ago, what good is having the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger?
Right.
That's a question that New Yorkers are still wrestling with today in 2025. And so what I have put forward is a vision to make the most expensive city in the United States of America affordable. At a time when we have the wealthiest city, it is also one where 1 in 4 are living in poverty. And to your point, we have a number of New Yorkers who are doing quite well. The top 1% of New York City earns $1 million or more a year. And my vision is not one where they leave, it is one where they stay. It is
How do you get them to stay?
In part by showing them that asking them to pay more in taxes would increase even their quality of life. Because when you ask New Yorkers, what is it that is making them feel uneasy in this city? You often hear from them about the cleanliness of our city, the safety of our city, the affordability of our city. We are not asking to raise these taxes for the sake of it. We're asking so that we can actually make the slowest buses in the country fast and free, so that we can actually create a Department of Community Safety that would deploy dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers to the top 100 stations of the highest levels of mental health crises and homelessness. That relationship proving that tax dollar leads to that investment, because we know that it's not just a fiscal policy that takes somebody from New York City to somewhere else. Because a lot of New Yorkers, if they leave, they go to California, another high tax state. They go to New Jersey, another high tax state. Many people say they might go to Florida, but I have seen and heard from many New Yorkers concern about this new elimination of vaccine mandates in Florida that makes them question whether they would ever want to live there.
So you would raise the taxes, but
let me pause right here for just a second. The framing of this entire discussion is incredibly wrong. Why is there a focus on maintaining wealthy New Yorkers instead of trying to maintain the people who were born and raised in New York, that are working class, that are down and out, that are working 2 jobs? When I lived in New York, I didn't know anyone that had 1 job, including me. I didn't know anyone that had 1 job. And that was years ago. How do you think it is today? Why isn't the conversation around how do we continue to keep people in New York who grew up here, who were raised here, from leaving New York and moving down south because they just can't afford to actually have a quality of life here? It was really weird to me that Al Sharpton framed this in such a way is that we have to worry about the quality of life of the wealthy. No, we don't. They have the quality of life that most of us will never, ever, ever have. So why are we focused on that? But that's who he works for. Al Sharpton is one of those people, and unfortunately, they tend to target activists for this. Al Sharpton is one of those people that was an activist who apparently at some point was targeted by corporations, the Fed at one point. Al Sharpton at one point was a snitch, an informant, and decided to ditch the activism and put on a suit and blend in with the establishment. Every now and then they'll allow them to talk about a couple of, righteous activist things, but for the most part, they are going to defend the capitalists. They're going to defend the wealthy to make sure that they still have their foot where they want it to be. The same thing happened to Van Jones. Van Jones was an activist. He was another one that decided to ditch the activism and put on a suit and blend in with the establishment. So the whole framing around this from Al Sharpton on MSNBC is incredibly wrong. Let's continue on a little bit more here, and then we'll get to the part that is really pissing people off.
You are telling them why raise the taxes for the rich.
For the top 1%, we raised their personal income tax by 2%. So that would be if you make $1 million a year, $20,000 extra in taxes. And the point and my responsibility would be to deliver on that, to show them that it is a worthwhile investment.
We've heard rumblings in the recent...
show them it's a worthwhile investment. Again, it's like Zohran Mandami won the primary without having to please these billionaire people. And when we get to this next part here, I just want to remind you that Zohran Mandami also won Hakeem Jeffries' district. And that's important when we get to this part here about this global intifada. It is absolutely ridiculous. Let me get this here. Okay, listen to what Al Sharpton says here.
New York City is the home of the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. The mayor must build a relationship, whoever the mayor becomes, trust in all communities of the city. The term globalize the intifada has become a flashpoint for Jewish New Yorkers who say they're concerned about how your views on the Israeli-Gaza conflict will influence how you govern the city. You said on Meet the Press in July, that's not language you would use, but you don't want to police the speech of others. But we both know words matter. The Department of Defense means something different than the Department of War. I've experienced this throughout my own civil rights career, and I've had to correct myself to deal with what people receive may not be what I meant. And words have consequences, and sometimes we need to examine our own positions to build unity. Has your personal views on the phrase of global intifada changed since you've been running for mayor? Do you understand those that see it in a more threatening way than...
Pause. Here's the problem, folks. Al Sharpton is choosing to focus on a phrase, words, instead of focusing on action. Right now, you have a genocide taking place in Gaza. Don't want to deal with Gaza? Put that aside for a second. Let's talk about the West Bank. You have Israeli settlers beating, burning, killing Palestinians for their homes, taking their homes. And on top of that, you have multiple videos on social media, which I know Al Sharpton has seen, multiple videos on social media of Israelis and Zionists and settlers in the West Bank bragging about it. Al Sharpton says that words matter. Where was this words matter from Al Sharpton when Zionists in Brooklyn were chasing the pro-Palestinian protesters down the street? A woman, which we showed that one on this show, chasing a woman down the street, threatening to beat her, sexually assault her. Where was the words matter from Al Sharpton then? Where were the words matter? And see, this is the point that I try to bring up. There is a protected group. And Al Sharpton, as a Black commentator, someone who was a part of, some champion for civil rights or whatever, he is choosing to focus on a phrase instead of focusing on actual action. Where was Al Sharpton when the Zionists chased that woman down the street who they assumed was a pro-Palestinian protester, and she was not, and they beat that woman? Where was Al Sharpton? Where was the words matter then? Where was it? Where were the words and actions? We didn't get to actions part. Where the words and actions matter when the Zionists were spitting on pro-Palestinian protesters? Where was all this matters then? Why is Al Sharpton choosing to focus on a phrase instead of focusing on actions? And why are you focusing on a phrase for a select group of people? That's the first part. If I was Zohran Mandami sitting in that seat, I would have asked that question. Why are you focusing on a phrase instead of focusing on the actions that are happening right now to the Palestinian people and to pro-Palestinian protesters right here in New York City? That would have been my response. But that's not what Zohran Mandami said. Here's what he said, and this is what is giving people pause.
I'm just not going to police other people's language.
Yes, they have. And when we won the primary election, I said on that stage that I know that millions of New Yorkers care deeply about what happens in Israel and Palestine, and I'm one of those New Yorkers. And I commit to reaching even further to understand disagreement, to wrestle with the complexities of those differing viewpoints, because what this city deserves is a mayor that looks not only to represent the close to 600,000 New Yorkers that voted for me, but rather the 8.5 million people that call this city home.
Pause. Before he even finishes, he hasn't gotten to the other part yet. One of the things I noticed that Zohran Mandami did here is he mentioned complexities. That is a Zionist talking point when you're talking about this particular issue. To say it's complex. That's what they all say. It's not complex. And what I have started to notice, and you may be noticing this as well, it seems like to me, the moment Bernie Sanders got a hold of Zohran Mandami and told him to tone down the Israel rhetoric, it seems like his words have started to change. Now wait for it.
And in the meetings that I have had since that moment, I've met with Jewish elected officials, with rabbis, with community leaders. And there was one rabbi that spoke to me about how that phrase for her brought back memories of bus bombings in Haifa, of restaurant attacks in Jerusalem. And I knew that from what she was sharing with me, that she had a fear, as she said, that could come home to New York City. And
so we're talking about a fear that someone has by a phrase that is being used, but no action has been committed against you. But you have actions that have been committed against Palestinians, not just in Middle East, actually here in the United States as well. What about the 3 Palestinian American college students at the University of Vermont that were shot at? You see, there's a difference between a phrase, which, by the way, I don't believe that phrase means what they say it means. I've told you guys this before. Like, they can say from the river to the sea, but you're not supposed to say from the river to the sea. But where was that same type of outrage when a man shot at 3 University of Vermont Palestinian American college students just for walking down the street? They weren't a part of a protest, and even if they were, so what? That was an action. So we are seriously talking about a phrase that is being used, and I feel afraid, but nothing has happened to you. But because you have that fear, which I don't even believe that's real. I don't believe this fear is real. But you say you have this fear because of words that have been said. Okay. What if every time, and for people in the chat, listen up, buckle up. What if every time, as a Black person, every time someone calls me the N-word, or let's go with someone older. Let's say for an older Black person, someone who's Gen X, someone who's a boomer. What if they said every time someone called them the N-word, they feel afraid and feel fearful? What are you going to do about that, politician? What if they said that? What if Black people said, every time you call me the N-word, I get fear. I'm shaken up about, my great-grandparents being lynched or the crosses that were burned in our yard. What if that happened? Do you really think any of these politicians, any of these candidates would go to such extremes, to these lengths, to say, we got to do everything that we can to protect the Black community? Hell to the no. Everybody needs to pay attention to what is happening here. I have warned you about this before. You have a white minority that has somehow, in some way, shape, or form, managed to make itself the priority over. You have people in this country, marginalized people in this country, that literally have every type of systemic obstacle against us as you can think of. But yet somehow a white minority has made themselves the priority. Pay attention, folks. So this candidate, Zohran Mandami, he's expected to change the way he's running his campaign and what he said about the pro-Palestinian movement. He's expected to change that because people have hurt feelings. But he's not but nobody else is expected to change their campaign for the harms that were done in the past and continue to happen today to the Black community. Sit on that for a minute. For the indigenous community, the missing indigenous women that are nowhere to be found. Let that marinate. And then what makes it worse is they get a Black commentator to do it for you. They get Al Sharpton. They get him to do the work, the bidding of it. Wait till you hear what he says.
So in having that conversation with her, I knew that the gap between the intent that I have heard some New Yorkers share with the use of that language of calling for the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land was disconnected from the impact it was having in that same conversation I was having with that rabbi. So I have said, after having that conversation, that this is language I would discourage.
Now,
Everybody heard what he said? This part one more time. One more time. This is very important.
Community leaders. And there was one rabbi that spoke to me about how that phrase for her brought back memories of bus bombings in Haifa, of restaurant attacks in Jerusalem. And I knew that from what she was sharing with me that she had a fear, as she said, that could come home to New York City. And so in having that conversation with her, I knew that the gap between the intent that I have heard some New Yorkers share with the use of that language of calling for the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land was disconnected from the impact it was having in that same conversation I was having with that rabbi.
So
I have said, after having that conversation, that this is language I would discourage.
That changed quickly. The impact that the language has, people who have no power having that type of an impact, let's put that all together. Zohran Mandami is now backtracking on what he said about protesters being able to use that phrase. He is now going back. And I find it interesting that this is happening after he had this sit down, this conversation with Bernie Sanders, where Bernie told him to tone it down on Israel. This is what I'm going to say. I get it. I think some people want to support him based on the economic issues, but for the people who really rally behind him also because of his pro-Palestinian stance, and now he's backtracking on this. He also backtracked on defund the police, etc. It is very clear that he is trying to fit in more with the largest part of the Democratic Party, which is the Democrat establishment. And he hasn't even won yet. He's probably going to win based on the numbers, but he hasn't even won yet. So my thing is, he's already showing you that he's willing to backtrack. He's willing to water down his campaign a little bit. He's already showing you. With the others, we had to wait until they were elected to see it. Like AOC talked a lot of good game, and then she got in there and we were like, yeah, she's out there protesting at Nancy Pelosi's office. That's what we're talking about. And then she had a talking to, and that was gone. And we see how she's turned out. So my point is, he's already showing you now, and he hasn't even won. So you have to hold politicians accountable. And I get it. Your choices are Zohran Mandami, Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, and the Silva guy. I get it, right? You guys are like, who else are we supposed to support? I get it. All I'm saying is hold him accountable. Hold him accountable now. If you have Zohran Mandami's ear right now, if you've been able to talk to him in person, if you've been able to sit down and meet with him, hold him accountable on this now. Because I'm here to tell you, once they get in, that's it. And some people are already holding him accountable. Let's look at Muhammad here. Muhammad, he said, Zohran Mandami, I have told you this on the phone, in person, and I will reiterate it publicly. What you think the phrase globalize the intifada, our beautiful uprising against occupation, is irrelevant. What matters is that it's a slogan adopted by a movement that is partly responsible for your success, and you mustn't throw them under the bus. We are facing unprecedented levels of state repression and institutional censorship. Both our political organizing and speech are criminalized, and we are confronting genocide for God's sake. We are confronting genocide for God's sake. That you choose to continue elevating Jewish feelings over the lives of Palestinians over the fact of genocide is nothing more than punching down on those who have helped elevate you. And not to mention, it's a bad electoral strategy considering you are quite literally winning and need not to bow down to Zionist pressure. The tens of thousands of volunteers who have canvassed for you in the scorching hot sun, they are not to be taken for granted. Their support isn't unconditional. Remember that. That is coming from Muhammad here. I just want to reiterate again, Zohran Mandami won Hakeem Jeffrey's district. Zohran Mandami is leading in particular with the youth vote, the younger voters in New York City, and also young Jewish voters heavily are supporting Zohran Mandami. The point is, he doesn't need to change his rhetoric. He can still win. He's still well ahead of Andrew Cuomo. This is the Democrat establishment getting to Zohran Mandami. That's what this is. Everybody plays the fool. It's like, to me, this makes absolutely no sense. You are well ahead. You won Hakim's district. You're able to connect with a lot of the Jewish voters who really are supporting you in the primary and still supporting you now. There was no reason for Zohran Mandami to change course. So that tells me that he is giving into the pressure from Dem leadership. That's what this is about. So Muhammad is holding him accountable. Bree chimed in here. AOC charted a path for progressives run and win because of lefty enthusiasm. Become embraced by the mainstream when they fall in love with your identity/youth. Abandon the left without consequence because now you have liberals to support you. I hope Zohran doesn't take that route. And Bree interviewed Zohran Mandami. In fact, she interviewed him before I think a lot of people even knew who he was. That's before he was polling as high as he is now. So it's just, I'm telling you, man. And even Blakely, who was pretty excited about Zohran, she had some things to say too. She wasn't happy about what he said.
Let's talk about this embarrassing fucking cringe struggle session that Zohran Mamdani had with Reverend Al Sharpton. Before we get to this cringe bullshit clip in which Reverend Al Sharpton takes like a fucking minute and a half to set up this struggle session, let me address Zohran, okay? In case you just happen to see this, Zohran Mamdani. What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck? Do you think we're stupid? Do you think we're stupid? First of all, there are more than just Jewish New Yorkers that live here, okay? I and others have given you a lot of grace because we know that these people are deranged and they've been witch hunting you about this for fucking months. But my patience is fixing to run out, especially since we already have a bunch of deranged Zionists running in this race in Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo. We don't need you to repeat their fucking bullshit propaganda. You partially won because people like that you didn't capitulate to their bullying. But it looks like you are now. This fucking bullshit answer sounded like a scumbag politician. Sounds to me like you're throwing Palestinians under the fucking bus and those of us who want to free Palestine. This is ridiculous. Either you've already sold out and you haven't even won yet, or you're allowing them to bully you into saying this. Either way, it's not a good fucking look.
Blakely, she has very raw energy, right? Her energy came out. Let's fast forward because that's showing you the part that I just showed.
Anti-Semitism is the only thing they want to talk about.
New York City is the home of the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. The mayor must build a relationship, whoever the mayor becomes, trust in all communities of the city. The term globalized the intifada has become a flashpoint for Jewish New Yorkers who say they're concerned about how your views on the Israeli-Gaza conflict will influence how you govern the city. You said on Meet the Press in July, that's not language you would use, but you don't want to police the speech of others. But we both know words matter.
Sorry, I'm just fast forwarding.
Because of its impact?
Has your personal views on the phrase of global intifada changed since you've been running for mayor? Do you understand those that see it in a more threatening way than saying, I'm just not going to police other people's language?
This is so
they have. And you know, when we won the primary election, I said on that stage that I know that millions of New Yorkers care deeply about what happens in Israel and Palestine, and I'm one of those New Yorkers. And I commit to reaching even further to understand disagreement, to wrestle with the complexities of those differing viewpoints. Because what this city deserves is a mayor that looks not only to represent the close to 600,000 New Yorkers that voted for me, but rather the 8.5 million people that call this city home. And in the meetings that I've had since that moment, I've met with Jewish elected officials, with rabbis, with community leaders.
Are we
and there was
talk
one
about
rabbi
them?
that spoke to me about how that phrase for her brought back
Or are we
memories
just
of
gonna
bus
keep
bombings in
censoring
Haifa,
Jewish
restaurant attacks in
feelings?
Jerusalem. And I knew that from what she was sharing with me that she had a fear, as she said, that could come home to New York City. And so in having that conversation with her, I knew that the gap between the intent that I've heard some New Yorkers share with the use of that language of calling for the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land was disconnected from the impact.
Should answer. Did you just meet with J Street? Is that what the fuck this is? For these liberal fucking Zionist talking points? What about what Palestinians think? Did you consult with them? Did you ask them how it made them feel? Have you thought about taking a break from your Zionist talking point tour and listening to how the Palestinians feel about the phrase? How fucking stupid do you think we are? How fucking stupid. Also, the complexities, you're really doing the complexity bullshit right now. What a fucking cop-out. Except it's not complex. And you know it's not complex. So there's only two reasons why you'd be doing this. Either one, you're selling out like all lawmakers before you so that you can appease the Zionists and get power. Or you're afraid and they're intimidating you and you're allowing them to cow you. Regardless of what the reason is, you don't look like a leader. Leaders don't do this shit. And if you're not ready to take the hate that you had to have known was coming and the crazy opposition that you knew you were going to face from big corporations, the billionaires and the Zionists, then why should I or any other New Yorker have any fucking confidence that you're going to stand up for our interests? And you know what? For the most part, I've been putting the blame on the politicians and the media because they are the ones that are not letting this die. At one point, Al Sharpton's like, people are very concerned about it. It's become a thing. No, they're not. People aren't concerned about it. It's you ghouls in the media and our political class. So mostly I've been putting on that. But you know what? Your answer is fucking bullshit. It's bullshit and you fucking know it's bullshit and it's utterly unacceptable. Unacceptable. If you think that you're going to start doing this fucking J Street style liberal Zionist fucking horseshit in which we censor Jewish feelings all the time. Because we're not having any conversations about censoring Muslim and Arab feelings despite the fact that hate crimes are up against them. But instead of standing by what the fuck you originally said and all of us had your back, you decided you were going to do this shit. And no, I won't be letting this go because even though as a New Yorker, my focus is on the fact that I can't afford fucking food or rent. And I would like for that to be the main focus. But you know what? Your answer in this kind of fucking capitulation tells me what the fuck type of time you're on. Are you going to meet with Palestinian Arabs and how they feel? Because you keep talking about how you're meeting with rabbis and talking about how it feels for them and how it makes them feel. I haven't heard you say anything recently about meeting with Muslims and Arabs and how they feel about that saying. Where you be? And who is this for? Because no matter how much you try to fucking capitulate to them, it's never going to be enough. They're always going to hate you. They're going to try to destroy you no matter what. So maybe you should focus on the people that fucking brought you to the dance.
I think, we haven't done it in a while, but I think we may have to drop the beat for Blakely. Dropping the beats. Dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat. In the street. I know we haven't done that in a while, but I had to do it because Blakely, oh my God, she's a Mandami supporter, I'm pretty sure she's probably still going to support Zohran Mandami regardless because she supports the economic policies. And like I said, I told you who the choices are. But I think this is holding politicians accountable, right? Like holding them accountable before they, get into office. And I just think that Zohran Mandami had, I guess, a oiled like campaign where a lot of people came out for him, and he doesn't need to change. He doesn't need to change the rhetoric. There was no need for him to do that. And to me, it just goes to show you again, Democrat establishment, they got to him. Yay. Everybody plays the fool. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you for the super sticker, Chief Raka. Thank you. Thank you, Kenman. Al Sharpton lost weight in his brain as well. Thank you, Roger. Department of Grand Imperialism. Damn spell autocorrect. Don't you hate autocorrect? Thank you, New York Varsity. A lot of lies told about Mandami. You know who isn't buying it? New Yorkers. Why is everyone in their business right now? We know why. Thank you, radical leftist extremist. One great place to see stories of poverty is Reddit. Yeah. Thank you, Wasim. Globalize the Hunkana Muta or globalize the enchilada according to AI. AI is a mess. Thank you, Kinman. I'm worried about the Intidatafa. Thanks, Roger. I think he's hungry. He keeps saying global empanada. You guys just talking about food now. Thank you for the super sticker, Ayurvedic. Thank you, P. Smith. Zohran took $250,000 from Elizabeth Simmons, whose father is a billionaire hedge fund manager, Jamie Simmons, for his campaign. Did he take that money directly from her, or did she donate that money to a PAC? I think she donated that money to a PAC. I'll double check that, but I think that's the one who, I don't think that money she donated directly to him. Thank you for the super sticker, Karina Clies, excuse me. I don't know why I said Kyles. Thank Trash Panda. Mandani equals controlled opposition. Thank you for this one, Trash Panda. What Zohran meant to say was Israel first. Oh boy. Thank you, Mark. Sabby, Zohran, not for us, no compromise. Thank you, Patrick. Every Abrahamic religion worships a God that demands and favors child sacrifice and genocide and child trafficking. If you worship it, you'll be. Okay, I don't know about that. Thank you, Wasim. My Palestinian aunt lives in Haifa, and she always almost asks for asylum in Sweden as her Christian community gets threatened. Yeah. Thank you, Roger. Did Al ask about Black issues? Al plan rabbi? Of course not. Thank you, Wasim. Keep in mind, Muslim is the largest population in the world right now. Just saying they are the majority and the others are the minority. That's a good point. And thank you, Patrick. Jephthah burns his daughter alive in Judges and is favored by the biblical God for it. There's more examples. Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen in the Bible. Thank you, Kinman. The dumbest AI is smarter than Sharpton. And thank you, Nia. Hey, Sabby, have you also heard of the data center planned for Landover, Maryland? Briefly, I need to look into that a little bit more, though. I don't know a lot of the details about that. I think we have a couple more comments to get to the Rumble rant. Thank you, Goo. Or the Palestinian child unalived by his landlord in Chicago. That's another one. Or the Zionist woman trying to drown Palestinian 3-year-old kids in Texas. And thank you for this one. Zohran, no matter how much ass you kiss, you will end up like Qatar and Mahmoud Abbas. You will never make them happy. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Stephanie. Sabby, Max Blumenthal was on Judge Knopp today, and he said exactly what you were saying about the Qatar bombing. Point for point. He confirmed all your suspicions. Also, Garland Nixon today said there's something fishy about Zohran's wife, whose background is vague and shady. Interesting. I guess I got some things to catch up on. Thank you, Roger. This is New York City, New York State, the city and the state that is at the center of American capitalism, the financial district. We don't have to tax individuals. We can tax actions. Predatory speculative action, for example, 10% tax on derivatives, 10% tax on high frequency trading, and 10% tax on financial transactions, 10% on capital gains, 10% on carried interest, 10% on speculation, 10% on stock transfer. Sab, I punched into Al if all the billionaires left New York State, but we had a public bank with taxes. I just mentioned that we would be able to maintain a surplus. Al answered back in the long term, which means it would probably take a decade after chartering a public bank to build up to that where we can have that surplus without billionaires, but we cannot do it cold. Millionaires ain't going nowhere. Yeah. And thank you for the tip, Stephanie. Thanks, Sabby, for another great mutual aid workshop. I sent you an email today with links to the pics of our back to school event 2 weeks ago. Subject line, our mutual aid photo gallery. I also included a link to the website for the Banana Kelly. Thank you. Thank you. I should be checking email later this week. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gents, if you haven't had a chance to do so, can you do me a solid? Can you smash that like? Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share just like a Care Bear. We're going to go to an announcement, and then we got 2 more stories for you. We're going to keep it moving and moving, and then we will have call in after the show. Quick announcement, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's donated to my documentary fund so far. The documentary is called Remove Black Erasure in Boston. Our goal is 10,000. We've reached 7,120. I will show you the trailer really quick for that. And if you would like to donate, this documentary is called Removed Black Erasure in Boston. This is about the removal of Black neighborhoods in Boston in the past and what is currently happening now in the present. It is a different form of gentrification. The fundraiser here is to pay for the editor, who's been doing a really great job. So if you can contribute, that would be great. Eric, you can add the link to that. Sorry, you can add the link to that in the chat when you get a chance. Let me move that. Oh, I have to do it this way. I guess I have to do it on YouTube. So I'll show you the trailer for it if you have not seen it. And yeah, I don't know why things are auto playing. I'll show you the trailer for it if you haven't seen it. And if you want to donate, then we'll put that link for you in the chat. So here's the trailer for the documentary that I am working on. Yes, Boston is home to winning sports teams and elite universities. But some might say that there are two Bostons.
If you look at City Hall, no one's talking about that specific racial and historical component that Black people are the ones that are being removed.
There's a huge significant difference in lived experiences, and we know this because of the wealth report. We're at $8.
This whole plan of gentrification isn't a new concept. In every city you go into in the Northeast, they kept moving Black people out of the inner city. So it's a plan. It's been in place for a long time.
While the displacement isn't as bad as 1963, it hasn't gotten much better now.
It's by design that they've created spaces where we are no longer seen anymore. They're wiping us out one community at a time, and they're getting away with it. This is gentrification. Franklin Park has been a place where we have built community, and all these things are at risk.
Why is the mayor willing to throw herself on this sword, do or die, for this project? It's not about soccer. It's about the additional profits that can be made in this entertainment complex.
It's a disrespect that you would take public parkland and then give it to a private group to control it.
And this project is Emmett Till's mama pulling back a curtain. And if people don't look at what's behind that curtain, it's coming to them.
All right, that's the trailer there, ladies and gents. So I think Eric put the link to Spot Fund there in the chat. If you want to donate to that project, there's the link to do so. This will be released before November. We do have a cutoff date for this, so I'm looking forward to it. Like it's really good so far. I think you guys are really gonna like it. All right, we're moving on to our next story here, ladies and gentlemen. This Epstein situation is just getting crazy. The stories continue to change. Just a couple of days ago, Mike Johnson said that Donald Trump was a federal agent for the Epstein case. Now he's trying to backtrack that. And now it appears that the letter that Donald Trump supposedly gave to Jeffrey Epstein for his birthday has now been given to Congress. And based on what I've seen, that definitely looks like Donald Trump's signature. Let's get started with all this craziness that happened a couple of days ago so we can just kind of go through the timeline here. For whatever insane, crazy reason, a Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, took it upon himself to say this to the media that Donald Trump was a federal agent. Listen to this.
He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms. It's detestable to him. He and I have spoken about.
What did he say?
It is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president.
What? What is happening? This is crazy. This is crazy. So he says, first he says it's a hoax. Like they go back and forth between this is a hoax, is it not a hoax thing. I guess Virginia Giuffre like story is just made up, even though it was very detailed, even though Donald Trump confirmed that he knew her, that she worked at Mar-a-Lago, but we're supposed to believe all this is just lies now. It's just a hoax. Then he goes on to say that Donald Trump was a federal agent or informant or whatever. And then now he's trying to backtrack this. Let me let him finish here, and then I'll get to the new thing that he said today.
It knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms. It's detestable to him. He and I have spoken about this as recently as 24 hours ago. And he's not saying.
He and I have spoken about this as recently as 24 hours ago. Like, none of these people can be trusted. Again, like I said, they're always going to look out for power and protect power. Thomas Massey is confirming that in a recent news segment. You're going to see that as well. And now, after saying that, and that clip went viral, now Mike Johnson is trying to backtrack and say, no, he's not a federal agent. What the hell is going on here? So here they are confronting him again.
What do you mean by that? All right. What I was referring to in that long conversation was what the victim's attorney said. More than a decade ago, President Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, and he was one of the only people, one of the only prominent people, as everyone has reported, not President Trump, but everybody about him, that he was willing to help law enforcement go after this guy who's a disgusting child abuser, sex trafficker, all the allegations. That's what they heard. So the president was helpful in that. I don't know if I use the right terminology, but that's common knowledge, and everybody knows that. So
there's a big difference between saying that he was willing to help law enforcement try to find him, which, let's be honest, I mean, he knew where Jeffrey Epstein was. I don't even know why people are falling for this bullshit. But there's a difference between saying that and saying that he was an informant or he was an agent. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God.
this is much ado about nothing.
Did the president tell you this specifically about his involvement?
I said, I was recounting what others have said. The president and I have talked about the Epstein evils many times. He's as disgusted by it as everybody else. He has long had a history of acknowledging that, and he has said repeatedly he wants everything to come out, all credible information, everything for the American public to decide.
Was he ever asked to wear a wire or anything like that?
I have no idea. No, I'm not saying that. I have no information about that whatsoever. I was repeating what has been common knowledge for a long time. The president was helpful in trying to get Epstein, for the law enforcement to go after Epstein. That's always been my understanding. That's common knowledge. It's the public's understanding.
That was not what you said. This is insane. Oh my God.
I was not breaking news there, okay? What I'm trying to emphasize is that the president is as disgusted about this as everyone is, all people of good conscience. We heard from the victims last week. It was gut-wrenching to hear their accounts. Many of them came out here and did it to a broader audience, to the public, but there's as many as 1,000 other victims, hundreds of young women, now some of them middle-aged women, who were subjected to these abuses for a long, long time, and justice is long overdue. So we're not just investigating Epstein and what happened, but why the justice system failed these women for so long. That is why the House Oversight Committee is on this so aggressively, and as you saw the latest developments, I think Chairman Comer and some other members are going down to Florida. They're going down to the Epstein estate to look at visitor laws at the estate. By the way, none of this is encompassed in the discharge petition gambit. This is what the Oversight Committee is tasked to do. That is what they are doing in a bipartisan fashion. You have very aggressive members on both sides of the aisle that are on it, and we are greatly comforted by that. So we fully support it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Donald Trump probably had some words to say to Mike Johnson after that video went viral, but that's just the beginning. Because now, remember that birthday card that Donald Trump, or that birthday letter that he sent to Jeffrey Epstein? The Wall Street Journal published that story, but they didn't actually show the letter. And people were like, if this is true, where's the letter? Well, now the letter has managed to appear, allegedly. I say allegedly because y'all ain't coming after me. You ain't sending me to court. Listen to this one. The Wall Street Journal says lawyers for Jeffrey Epstein's estate have given Congress a copy of the birthday book put together for the financier's 50th birthday, which includes a letter with Donald Trump's signature that he has said does not exist. On Monday, the House Oversight Committee members confirmed that they received a copy of the birthday book, including the letter bearing Donald Trump's signature. And that definitely looks like Donald Trump's signature. This isn't the first time we have seen it, right? So that looks like his signature, but Donald Trump said it does not exist. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's go ahead and get into this story. Oh boy.
Breaking news out of Washington, the House Oversight Committee just received files from the estate of Jeffrey Epstein. A Democratic spokesperson says committee Democrats are reviewing hundreds of documents handed over to the committee, and they have just released that body drawing allegedly drawn by President Trump for Epstein's 50th birthday. Here it is. The Wall Street Journal was first to report on it a few months ago, and today we're getting a first look at it. Joining us now, staff writer for The Atlantic and MSNBC political contributor Mark Leibovich.
Now, one of the things that I will say is when they published that article, they should have had the letter in that article, and they did not. So that obviously gave room for Donald Trump to say it's not real, it's fake, it's a hoax, etc. So now it's like people who are already skeptical are like, oh, so now you can produce it, but you couldn't produce it then. So that was a failure on the Wall Street Journal. Like when they first broke that story, they should have already had that letter produced in that article. So people who are diehard Trump supporters and were skeptical anyway are not even going to believe it now. But that definitely looks like Donald Trump's signature.
Bulwark senior reporter Will Sommer, host of the Bulwark podcast, and an MSNBC political analyst, Tim Miller. Mark, I know you are thrilled and honored to be on the show today to get a first glimpse of this.
It's happening in real time. First of all, I'm always thrilled and honored to be on the show, Katie. This is, we've had the wording on this before. We've sort of had a general sort of contours of what this is before. This is actually sort of the physical. This is actually it. We are seeing this. It's unclear whether the needle will move any more than it already has. But obviously, look, Donald Trump has said that this doesn't exist. This, what I can tell, looks like it exists. So start with that. We'll see, if this propels the story any faster, any greater time than it will. Although I suspect that there will be other things that we didn't know before that are going to be coming out in the probably next few days.
Will, what about you? What do you think?
Let me add this here before Will says what he has to say. Because here's the thing about the media. Obviously, MSNBC is going to, go against Donald Trump on this issue, and Fox News is going to defend them on this issue. That's the problem that we have with corporate media. We don't have just regular straight news, like I guess what my parents grew up with, like what my parents told me about when they were growing up. But the reality is that Donald Trump probably should have said, yeah, I signed, that book for his birthday. I was just joking around. Yeah, I drew an image of, a woman's body or whatever. It was just a little joke or whatever. Probably should have went ahead and claimed that. And now it just kind of looks like, why? Because even then, that still doesn't mean that you partook in those activities. That still doesn't mean that you abused those girls. You know what I'm saying? But what's weird about this Epstein situation, as much as Trump says he had nothing to do with what happened on that island to those girls, and he didn't sleep with any underage girls on Jeffrey Epstein's island, the way that he has moved around this particular issue has made him look even more suspicious. That's the thing. So this is one of those things he probably should have just claimed. Let's continue.
Yeah, look, this is the letter that has all the stuff about, secrets and ages not changing, things like that. So I think it's great to see it. The sort of instant reaction I'm seeing from right-wing media, they're really focusing a lot on the signature, saying, Charlie Kirk, for example, is saying, that doesn't really look like Trump's signature. It looks just like Trump's signature. If you pull up what Trump's signature looks like, it looks pretty much exactly like that. I think this is going to keep the story going, the Epstein story that Trump has obviously tried to avoid. That and Mike Johnson claiming and now backing off the idea that Trump was some sort of FBI informant against Epstein. I think the story is sort of turning against the administration once again.
Yeah, I am pulling up Donald Trump's signature right now, and gosh, the D is exactly the same. I don't know. Listen, I'm not a handwriting.
Hold up. Let's see if Eric can find it. Eric, can you find Donald Trump's signature any pictures of Donald Trump's signature, like when Donald Trump like holds up the executive orders that he signs, you see his signature then. So that's something to look at. Eric, if you can find it, let me know. And we can make a comparison.
Expert, but this was in the birthday book. The Wall Street Journal reports that he submitted it. Donald Trump denies it. It's just a weird thing, Tim, it's a weird hill to die on. I did not write that letter. I did not draw that picture. We all know they were friends. It's been documented that they were friends. Why are they so concerned about admitting that Donald Trump sent him an image like this? It's not like no one knows that Donald Trump himself is body.
Yeah, well, I think it's their instinct to lie, for starters. Was when they're presented with inconvenient information, it's easier for them to talk about the fake news and blame the fake news than actually engage on the merits. On this one in particular, it is true that it's not known that Donald Trump was body, but there is this mythos that Will could talk about for sure on the right, on some on the MAGA right and the QAnon right, that Trump was like fighting against, the elite pedophile rings out there, and that he was, some warrior on the inside who was going to expose all these people. And now here he is, not only not exposing them all, but writing this note to Epstein here that is just extremely familiar, right? Like it's one thing. It is true that famous people sometimes sign birthday cards for people or sign generic notes for people. That is not what we're seeing here. I mean, we have this drawing of what appears to be a young woman, I would say, and Donald Trump talking about how they share certain things in common, about how they have all these wonderful secrets together. I mean, it's a letter from two guys that get in trouble together and have a bromance. That's what this is. It's not some generic letter. And so I think that's why they probably are more sensitive about it, because it's not as if it's just two famous people getting their picture together at another famous person's party. It's more intimate.
We got that signature. Let's go ahead and pull it up. Let me come out of here. I think we got the comparison. Thank you so much, Corey. So let's take a look, folks, and see what we're dealing with here. I don't know why. Oh, hold on. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and take a look, because someone said in the chat the signature has changed a little bit throughout the years. Okay, there's one there, and then we'll just go back and forth between that one and the one from the Wall Street Journal. So let's go ahead and pull this up. Okay. And sorry to put this up here so bold like this. Here's the signature that's on the birthday card. And here's the signature. What is this from, Corey? Corey told me what this was from. Hold on. Make this bigger. There's the signature. Thank you, Corey. USA to executive order. There's the signature from Donald Trump's executive order. Him signing one of those. Okay. And then let's go back and look at the one from the birthday card. It doesn't look exactly the same. Like this one looks like it just says Donald. And this one looks like it's probably Donald Trump. It looks like maybe this is his full name. And the one with the birthday card or birthday book, whatever it was, looks like maybe that's just his first name. Interesting. Let's go back in for a little bit more here. I don't think one more part here I wanted to show you, and then I'm going to show you what Thomas Massey just said.
You on that, but I don't think would it be surprising that Donald Trump wrote something like this to one of his friends? No, even if that friend did turn out to be a creep, I'm not sure it would be surprising. I don't know if that inherently means that Donald Trump himself is also engaging in the same behavior. He was interacting with lots of people. I think making that jump is easier to do if the person is being cagey about it and strange and not admitting to just some obvious things. When you're not saying, yeah, I wrote this I did do this picture. No, it's not me. Somebody else drew it. It's not my signature. When it looks exactly like your signature, that starts to raise more questions. But I want to linger on what Tim said a moment ago about the right canonizing Donald Trump as the figure who was going to expose all of this. Speaker Mike Johnson had this very weird moment on Friday where he suggested that Donald Trump,
that he was an informant. We saw that part. So either way, like I said, I don't know to tell you guys other than the fact that I do not think Donald Trump's hands are clean here. I've been very clear about that from day one. There was no reason for him to lie about that birthday book. And Fire brought up a really good point. You don't sign B-Day cards with a last name for friends. That's a good point. So I don't know, man. I don't know, but I do know this. They're trying to protect the wealthy. They're trying to protect billionaires. They're trying to protect donors. In fact, Thomas Massie just said that recently on ABC News.
Why do you think Congressman Massie, the president, is resisting the release?
I think it's going to be embarrassing to some of the billionaires, some of the donors who are politically connected to his campaign. I also think Democrats are going to be implicated in this, Democrat donors. And when you get to the billionaire level, a lot of these folks give to both parties anyway. There are probably intelligence ties to our CIA and maybe to other foreign intelligence, and the American people would be shocked, I think, to know that our intelligence agency was working with a pedophile who was running a sex trafficking ring. So these are the reasons I think that they're resisting this. But we can't avoid justice just to avoid embarrassments for some very powerful men.
Why do you think Congressman Massie, the president, is resisting the release?
Well, kudos to Thomas Massie for being very brave to say that on the news, on national television, because that's exactly what this is about. They're trying to protect billionaires. They're trying to protect donors, and of course, some intelligence as well. That's really what it comes down to. And I hope more people are waking up to that. But like I said, everybody plays the fool, right? Some people are really believing that the whole Epstein thing is just a hoax, even after they were so convinced about it when Biden was president. And now all it takes is for Donald Trump to enter the White House and tell you, no, it's not real. It's just a hoax or whatever. And people just fold just like that. So people you got to think for yourself. This is too funny. Is this your signature? I don't know what to say. You guys are too much. Oh my gosh. I think we can dive right into the next story. All right, now is the time to laugh a little bit, I think. Okay. Last story of the night, ladies and gents, and then we'll jump right into the call-in segment. Again, the theme is everybody plays the fool. And Charlemagne the God played the fool during this conversation with Ben Shapiro on The Breakfast Club. Ben Shapiro made not just Charlemagne, but all the hosts on The Breakfast Club look like complete fools when discussing two particular issues, Israel and reparations. Yes, but there's a reason why this is happening. Many of you are probably sitting back and you're like, why are The Breakfast Club? They'll bring on someone like Ben Shapiro. They'll bring on these Zionists. They'll bring on people who are anti-Black, and they'll have conversations with them, but they won't bring on, he had a conversation with Ben Shapiro about reparations. You'll bring on him, but you won't bring on someone who actually started reparations organization, right? Like they won't bring on reparations activists, but they'll bring on Ben Shapiro and let's have that conversation with him. Well, if you're wondering that, what you need to know who owns iHeart Radio, which is actually part of iHeart Media. And you also need to know who those shareholders are. And I'm going to show you that tonight. And then I think you'll understand exactly why they don't push back on the Zionists and on the people who have anti-Black rhetoric. On the point of Israel, let's get into this part right here.
Do you feel that way about the Israel-Gaza war?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Israel, again, I know a lot of people over in Israel, obviously. And I know a lot of soldiers who've been gravely wounded going house to house in a conflict where
you
clearly
know people in Israel.
I know, shocker, right? Who would believe it? What was the giveaway? Yeah, exactly.
But you believe that? So you understand why people are upset about what Israel is doing.
I mean, I certainly understand that conflict is incredibly ugly. And when you look at pictures, particularly drone pictures of wrecked areas, then it's very
kids being killed.
I mean, any conflict,
civilians, casual civilians, as you just said.
I mean, yes, although I will say, obviously, that I believe that Israel has been as meticulous as any army in history in terms of its tactics in urban warfare. And the numbers bear this out. And again, I know people who've had their legs blown off going specifically house to house when Israel had complete air superiority. If Israel just didn't care about civilian casualties, they would have leveled the place October 8th. And they did not. Right? They've been going house to house. They've been moving populations. Obviously, all of this is ugly. There's no such thing as a pretty war, particularly in an urban environment. And could things be done differently, or should they be done differently in case-by-case situations? I'm sure, yes. I mean, again, war is very ugly. But this sort of large-scale accusations that have been made that Israel doesn't care about civilians or that Israel has been attempting a genocide, that's just factually untrue.
Problem number one. If you look there on the table, you'll see that's Ben Shapiro's book. So Ben Shapiro was on this show basically promoting his book and pushing more propaganda. What did I tell you a week ago? Pay attention. The Zionists are doing a podcast tour. It's not just Benjamin Netanyahu. You see, he's going on to these YouTube shows. You got Ben Shapiro trying to go on to more left-leaning shows or go to the Breakfast Club, which is more like hip hop, like, you know, black culture show that sometimes dabbles into politics. Charlemagne, usually a lot of times in that particular area, doesn't know what he's talking about. When it comes to foreign policy, Charlemagne doesn't know what he is talking about. So when someone like Ben Shapiro comes onto that show to challenge him, Charlemagne the God doesn't know. It's like he doesn't know how to debunk a lot of the things that he's saying. Whereas if Ben Shapiro went on a show with Max Blumenthal, Katie Halper, Aaron Mate, Glenn Greenwald, like they can easily debunk what he's saying. So the point of the visit is to spread pro-Israel propaganda, deny genocide, and to promote his book. You have to remember that Ben Shapiro has also had anti-Black rhetoric before. Charlemagne the God does not, I saw the whole thing. Charlemagne the God does not challenge Ben Shapiro. DJ Envy does not challenge Ben Shapiro. They just sit there, and for the most part, the little bit of pushback that Charlemagne gave is just kind of like, oh, okay. Ben Shapiro would say, well, no, that's not true. And Charlemagne would just nod and accept it. It's embarrassing. There is a reason why they are going on to these shows. And I'm here to tell you, one of them contacted me. I'm not going to tell you who, but one of the Zionists contacted me and asked to come on my show. That ain't happening over here. Because the goal is for them to spread that propaganda. They're not coming on because they're trying to be, understand where you're coming from. They're coming on to spread their propaganda. And they are doing it in a way to make it seem like I'm just nice and friendly. And I just wanted to come on and show you this is how, Israel really is. It's a game. It's a lie. And I sincerely hope people are not falling for it. But what is sad about this is, once again, Charlemagne does not know how to push back on this bullshit that Ben Shapiro is saying. When it comes to the genocide, yes, there is a genocide that is taking place. This whole theory of, well, they are being very meticulous, there are casualties in war. We have seen a number of videos where Israel IDF soldiers were purposefully killing children, bragging about it, making videos bragging about it. There were a number of IDF soldiers that admitted they were told to kill the Palestinians when they come to get the food. We have seen videos of Israeli settlers taking the food off the trucks and throwing it away so that the people in Gaza can't eat. We've seen videos of Israelis barbecuing right next to the freaking border while the Palestinians are starving. Now, Charlemagne the God, as I have seen these videos on social media, I'm pretty sure his damn ass saw these videos on social media as well. But Charlemagne the God doesn't once during this interview challenge Ben Shapiro about the videos that he is seeing of them killing these children, bragging about killing the children, starving the people. He doesn't challenge it at all. At all. The one thing that he says is, well, the genocide scholars just declared it a genocide. And then Ben Shapiro goes, oh, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean nothing. Apparently, when it comes to Israel, international law doesn't mean anything. Genocide scholars don't mean anything. Nothing means anything when it comes to Israel. They can just do whatever they want. Let's continue on.
I was going to ask, with you being in media, it seems like these days you don't know who to trust in media, right? Because it seems like media gets it wrong, and we see it all the time with reputable sources. So what do you say to those people? Because we don't know what to believe anymore, especially if it's something that we don't necessarily know 1,000%.
So what I say on my show all the time is actually you should listen to I'm a conservative. You should listen to my show, and then you should listen to a show coming from the other side. And where we are saying the same thing, that's usually the core of fact, and everything else is opinion. And then you can sort of determine for yourself whether you think one opinion is more plausible than the other. I obviously agree with me, and so I tend to think that my opinions are well grounded in evidence and fact. But obviously, I have a lot of friends who are on the other side of the aisle who believe exactly the same thing. And so I think that the best way to actually achieve your own sense of understanding of the facts is to listen to a wide variety of sources and then try to come to a conclusion that is mostly based in the evidence.
And you
can't that's interesting. I want to go back to your book in a second, but I'm glad you said that because you don't think what's happening in Gaza is a genocide.
Correct.
Okay, but the world's leading association of genocide scholars has declared that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza based off the pure definition of.
Well, it's not actually, if you read their actual study, it's not based on the quote unquote pure definition of genocide. They don't actually even define genocide in the document. And they basically went out to their membership, but they didn't go out to the entire membership. They went out to a generic membership. It is very easy to join the International Association of Genocide Scholars. In fact, there were several people yesterday who just signed up and were immediately admitted, even though they have no actual background in genocide. The question is not whether some sort of coterie of people who call themselves experts in an issue are quote unquote experts on the issue. The question is whether the definition is met. The definition of genocide is not met in Gaza by any stretch of the imagination. And you can cite to me, a group that I hadn't heard of until 2 seconds ago, and nobody had heard of until 2 seconds ago, that voted in a particular way. That doesn't make a difference definitionally.
So what is?
Pause. So here's where you should push back, right? Here's what Charlemagne doesn't do. So first of all, the definition of genocide includes the word intent. And Israel has shown multiple examples of intent to exterminate an entire population of people, whether it's something they've said verbally on video, which we have seen numerous times, whether it is the actions that they've committed, whether it's them trying to starve the people and not feed them or kill them when they come to get food. It also includes the word intent. See, Charlemagne doesn't know this. And this is what I'm talking about. They bring people on this show to have these conversations with Charlemagne, and no offense, like no shade, all right? Charlemagne from South Carolina, I'm familiar with them because my friend used to live next door to Charlemagne when he used to host the local radio show in Columbia, South Carolina. So that is his area. His area of expertise is not foreign policy. His area is not politics, and he gets a lot of things wrong. And so people like Ben Shapiro are willing to come on and have these conversations with him because they know he's not going to challenge in any way, shape, or form because he doesn't know what he's talking about. And it drives me crazy. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, but this conversation has happened a lot with us in independent media. Charlemagne doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And someone just needs to tell him that to his damn face. And meanwhile, you allow Ben Shapiro to spread this propaganda. Let's go to the next part. Here's the other one. We haven't got to the reparations part yet. Hold on, it's coming. More here, a little bit more on Israel.
There's a better way to do politics. It's the conversation we were just having about genocide.
Yeah.
Let's define what genocide means, and then we can actually determine whether we think that is a thing that is happening, whether there's intent to do it. If we just say genocide and kind of throw that out there, and people.
Do you see how Ben Shapiro just used the word intent? And Charlemagne has this look on his face like he's bewildered. Oh no, what happened to man? You see what I'm saying? Like, this is what I'm talking about. Ben Shapiro knows it includes intent. We all know, we have all seen the intent from Israel. That is not a secret. It's out there. It's so open. It's so fucking public. We have watched them shoot down kids. I saw them. There was a video recently where they killed a little girl who was walking with the bag of flour that she just got. IDF's shoulder shot the girl in the back. Little girl. And Ben Shapiro is a Zionist. The talking points that he is giving are Zionist talking points. Does Charlemagne even know what Zionist means? Does he not realize that he is being propagandized like right to his face and he doesn't even know how to push back on it? Now, I don't know for certain that Charlemagne was the one who actually invited him on as a guest. If I'm willing to bet, the producers probably booked the guest for the Breakfast Club, if I'm willing to make a bet. But that's besides the point. When you know that someone is coming on, you have to do your research. And it's very clear to me it's not happening. Or the research that he's doing is coming from corporate media, or he's being brainwashed. But when you see who actually owns iHeart Radio, which is actually iHeart Media, and the shareholders, I think you all are going to start to understand why these guests are coming on. Certain ones are coming on and certain ones are being avoided. Let's continue on a little bit more here, and then we'll get to the reparations part.
We're saying that word, for example, October 8th, like before Israel had even responded. Then if you do that, then all you end up doing is making the conversation dumber and everybody more angry.
And you know what's interesting about that? I can usually tend to see both sides, meaning like I can understand why people say it's a genocide, but then, you know, I can understand why people in Israel say this is just us defending ourselves and it's an act of war. And
this is so stupid. Okay. Now see what this little game that Charlemagne is doing. I can see both sides where people say it's a genocide and some people say, oh, well, Israel says, well, it's just an act of war. You just said to Ben Shapiro what the genocide scholar said. And now here you go saying, well, I can see both sides. See both sides of what? How is it war when Israel is purposely targeting civilians? Same videos that I've seen Charlemagne the God has seen. I know he's seen these videos as well on social media. But here he is giving some type of leeway here towards Israel. Do people not understand how dangerous this is? I told you they will use black faces to do this too. We talked about Al Sharpton doing this. Now you got Charlemagne the God doing it. That's why Ben Shapiro went on there, because he knew he wasn't going to face a serious challenge.
as you said, you know, there's a lot of casualties, civilian casualties that happen in acts of war. But you don't really know that if you don't talk to people on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. And I think that.
So Charlemagne is making the case that you need to sit down and talk to the racist Zionists that called Palestinian people animals, called them, what did Netanyahu call them to, I forget the word that he used to call them in front of Patrick Bet-David, but calling them all these types of names, animals. You're supposed to sit down and have a conversation with these people. They don't like you either, Charlemagne. They don't like you either. Who's coming on next? Netanyahu? Y'all gonna bring his ass on the Breakfast Club? It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And that's the thing. And you push that same rhetoric. Does he not even realize how racist this country is? Does he not realize how racist Israel is? Or maybe Charlemagne does know and he's playing into it. Either way, it's sad. Savages and barbarians. Yes, that's what he called them. That's what they're calling them. But you need to listen to their side about what? They're on stolen land. Do you even know? Does Charlemagne even know the history? So you'll bring on Ben Shapiro and talk to him about this. Will he bring on anyone to explain the Palestinian side? Do you see Katie Halper being invited on to the Breakfast Club? Do you see any of these people? The last person I remember seeing come on there and talk about it was Mark Lamont Hill. Why is Charlemagne playing dumb? Mark Lamont Hill went onto the Breakfast Club and broke down the entire history of the occupation and everything, the Nakba, etc. So you mean to tell me after Mark Lamont Hill explained to you the whole history of the Nakba, the occupation, the oppression. You're going to sit here and say, well, I can see both sides of it. They were very obvious they don't want the Palestinian people there from the get-go. What other side do you need to see?
Genocide in that particular context, they're words that people use to express outrage that don't necessarily, the definition doesn't fit up with the word. I think when people say genocide, generally what they mean is, I'm very angry at what's happening and I wish it would stop. And so they throw out genocide because it's the worst thing they can think of. Because if you say that, then maybe Israel should stop. And you know, again, I think that you can empathize with that because I think everybody wants this to stop, including, by the way, the Israelis who would love for Hamas to surrender their weapons, stop, walk away, and the war ends. I mean,
no, it doesn't, because you've been killing Palestinians before October 7th. You've been going into Gaza and mowing the lawn. Again, Charlemagne doesn't know what to say, can't debunk this, can't push back on it. He's just sitting there like a paid puppet. I can only take so much of this. Now we move to the reparations conversation. If you get a chance, you watch the full interview. You let me know yourself. Wait, did we get to that part yet? Oh, one more part. Sorry, guys. One more part here.
A huge percentage of American history, there was a wide variety of people in America who believed black people were not fully human and therefore you couldn't enslave them.
Right, it was compromise.
Correct. And so like so was that a subjective question? That was not a subjective question. Black people are fully human and just as human as white people, equal, the same, right? Like and so
I had to play just that little part there because he says that there was a time when there was a group of people that didn't believe that black people were human. Ben Shapiro and his ilk in Israel don't believe the Palestinians are human. But see, Charlemagne doesn't say that because he just just a brain off nowhere, doesn't even know what to say. So he brings up the example of black people in front of a black man and says black people are human and some people didn't think that they were. And Charlemagne can't even push back on Ben Shapiro with, well, no offense, but according to the video footage and the things that are coming from Israel, it appears the Israelis don't believe the Palestinians are human. In fact, the numbers show the majority of Israelis are to the right of Benjamin Netanyahu and don't think that Benjamin Netanyahu has gone far enough. But Charlemagne knows nothing. Now we get to the reparations conversation. Here we go. He actually said this to Charlemagne the God's face. He says it to a black man who is from South Carolina, who would be a descendant of chattel slavery. He says this to his face, and lo and behold, Charlemagne doesn't come in to push back against Ben Shapiro. It is actually a Jewish guy who does it, and that was Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald is the one who steps in to debunk what Ben Shapiro says here, not just about Israel, but also about reparations. Listen to this.
Democracy, where the best people at any job get ahead. Now, if you're talking about reparations for immediate past wrongs, I think it's a much easier conversation. So I think that if you're in 1968, 1970, and you're talking about what can we do to rectify the problems of Jim Crow and make it right for the people who suffered under Jim Crow, I think that's a really live and interesting conversation, and I think that it's totally worth having. I think that on a sort of public policy level, reparative policies don't tend to be nearly as effective as people want them to be historically.
This is a damn lie. So go back to the word conversation.
And you're talking about what can we do to rectify the problems of Jim Crow and make it right for the people who suffered under Jim Crow. I think that's a really live and interesting conversation, and I think
interesting conversation. Does everybody see the game that is being played here right now? You see, because Ben and his group of peeps, they got reparations. Japanese members of, Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps also got cash reparations, as they should have. But something that I noticed, once you start talking about reparations for descendants of slavery, freedmen, all of a sudden it's a conversation that we can have. And what I think really bothered me by this particular part of the interview is that he's saying it to Charlemagne the God. He's saying it to a black man. And if I would have been sitting there, what I would have said is, no, when it came to giving reparations for survivors of the Holocaust, that was not just a conversation. Action took place. You got actual reparations. When it came to giving reparations to Japanese Americans that were a part of the internment camps, it wasn't just a conversation. They were given reparations, and they were also given cash reparations. A lot of people don't know this. But for whatever reason, when it comes to descendants of slavery, it should be a conversation. We're limited to conversation, but other groups got actual repair. Everyone needs to pay attention to the game that is being played. Let's continue on. It gets crazier.
I think that it's totally worth having. I think that on a sort of public policy level, reparative policies don't tend to be nearly as effective as people want them to be, historically speaking.
I mean, for Jewish people.
In what way?
Jewish people that receive reparations.
You mean Holocaust reparations, for example, from Germany? So I think that first of all, that there was like a gigantic fight actually in Israel over whether Holocaust survivors should accept reparations from Germany.
It doesn't matter. You still got it. It was still given to you. It was still given to you, right? Ben Shapiro wants you to believe that the reparations that was given to them didn't actually do anything, didn't actually help anything. That is an outright lie. So you see how he's trying to downplay it so that other groups of people who it's owed to, by the way, it's owed to freedmen, 40 acres and a mule, which didn't happen. It's owed. So now he has to find a way to, let me just explain to people it didn't actually do anything. That's a damn lie. And that will be debunked.
Because the idea was that it's allowing them to expiate their sins of the past, and they shouldn't be allowed to expiate those sins, and it's allowing them to sort of buy off the history for 50 grand or whatever it is. But that is not the reason why Israel has become successful economically. Like just on a success level, the reality is that cutting people checks rarely makes them more successful from the government. What usually makes people more successful is a determined attempt to become the things that the meritocracy demands of you. Right, so there were no.
So give the money back. See, this is the part. If the money didn't do anything, then give the money back. All the institutions that receive reparations, give that. Surely you would gladly give that money back if it didn't actually do anything. But it did do something. It did do something. Black people had land stolen, homes burned to the ground, multiple Black Wall Streets, everything just taken and taken and taken. And even right now, you see Columbia University giving cash reparations to Jewish employees at the university because they said their feelings were hurt during the protests. I don't see any of these universities who own slaves or continued those black codes, those Jim Crow laws saying, let's give reparations to the descendants of slavery. I don't hear none of them doing that. But because hurt feelings came from a white minority group, all of a sudden, that's it. We got to do something about it. So again, if it doesn't do anything, give the money back. Surely give it back. All the institutions, all the organizations that were able to build off of that, give it back. If it doesn't mean anything, Ben.
Long
I do
scale.
think the U.S. foreign assistance for Israel has helped financially.
Well, I mean, the U.S. foreign assistance for Israel actually is a bargain for the United States because Israel doesn't need the money. I've said this before.
Well,
Israel,
give it to us.
I mean,
we'll take it.
That's fine.
The Black community would gladly take it.
That's in it.
I can't speak for everybody.
It's like $3 billion a year. We should point out at this point that we spend, I think, $6 billion a year on our military bases in Japan, $5 billion a year on our military bases in Germany. We spend an awful lot of money that helps an awful lot of other countries. Israel has to spend all of that money, by the way, in the United States on military product. So all of the money that we send to it, we actually don't send money to Israel. We send military product to Israel that is made.
This is all lies. But Charlemagne doesn't know that. That's why he can't push back.
In the United States. And so it actually is a subsidy to the American defense industry. And there is a deal with Israel where Israel does intelligence sharing and also develops its own tech and can't disseminate it to the world. So, for example, the helmets that our F-35 pilots use, those are Israeli developed helmets, like that we can see over the horizon, for example. That's because Israel developed technological add-ons. So the idea that this is sort of like a zero sum, the money goes out, we get nothing back, that's actually not true. You make the argument that foreign aid entirely should be zeroed out. I think that is not a particularly useful argument, just because sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Like I'm by the way, in favor of assistance to Ukraine to prevent Russia from taking over Ukraine. This represents a vanishing portion of our national budget, right? If you're going to talk about like where the actual massive spending is going.
Now we going into Russia and Ukraine. Anything to take the eye off of Israel and the money that they're getting from the U.S. Well, someone did step in to debunk Ben Shapiro, and it is someone who was Jewish, and that was Glenn Greenwald. So listen to what Glenn said. So many false Ben Shapiro claims just in this short clip. In 2024, the U.S. gave Israel $18 billion in aid, not $3 billion. 2, $3.8 billion is the annual minimum the U.S. sends under the 2016 Obama-Netanyahu deal. So does everybody see this? So he said, oh, it's just like $3 billion. It's $3.8 billion, which I've said on the show multiple times before. But Charlemagne doesn't know that, so he doesn't push back on it, right? Much, but not all, must be spent with U.S. arms dealer. U.S. taxpayers give Israel a Raytheon gift certificate. So he said much, but not all. 4, Holocaust reparations amounted to tens of billions, not 50,000 per family. 5, NSA docs we reported show Israel is the leading surveillance threat against the United States. Let me highlight this one again, because see, this is what I'm talking about. Does everybody see this? Do you see the number? Glenn Greenwald said Holocaust reparations amounted to tens of billions, not $50,000 per family. So Ben Shapiro just sat in that chair in front of Charlemagne and just ratted off a bunch of lies that were not debunked. And that went out to millions of people because the Breakfast Club is a part of iHeart Radio, which is a part of iHeart Media, just spreading more and more lies. So Ben Shapiro tried to downplay how much they got for reparations so that you think that it wasn't much, so that you'll think that it didn't really do much. To that point, as I said, since it didn't do anything for you, Ben, give it back. This is why we have independent media. Van Lathan also came in. From 1949 to 2007, the U.S. gave $30 billion of non-military, purely economic aid to Israel. The peak was about $1.2 billion a year in the 80s and the 90s. They began to phase out this aid in 1999 and ended it in 2007. When Israel was a fledgling nation, the U.S. supported it economically, and Ben Shapiro knows that. Shout out to Van. Shout out to Van. They went on to bring up the Candace Owens piece that he said. Blakely said Ben Shapiro was happy to pay Candace Owens when she was doing anti-BLM, anti-trans, anti-women slop content for the Daily Wire, but then she touched the third rail. We're against cancel culture with an asterisk. Yeah, he did talk about that. Listen to this.
Candace Owens, she was here when she said that you couldn't fire her from Daily Wire. Like that would happen here on the Breakfast Club. So, and I saw everything that happened after, and you guys said that you guys were going separate ways. She said she was finally free. Did she quit because you told her to quit? Or was she fired?
Really get into this. I mean, so like for legal reasons, I will say that it's talking openly about this is kind of a problem. I will say that Candace and I have obviously quite significant political disagreements. Mm-hmm. And as the founder of a company that is dedicated to certain propositions, we have many people who I would not hire, and I would not hire Candace Owens today.
What about free speech? My boy Andrew Schultz, he said that he said if if you're not about free speech when you fire Candace, then you are just a propaganda machine for Israel.
Oh, well, with all respect to Andrew Schultz, that's a dumbass thing to say. And the reason that's a dumbass thing to say is because I've noticed that Candace is doing quite well for herself.
She is.
Right. And so I've not called for her to be deplatformed. I've not called for her to be prosecuted. I am not under no obligation to pay people from my pocketbook who are espousing beliefs that I find antithetical to my own. You don't have to hire, you don't have to hire Nick Fuentes or David Duke to come be a host at the Breakfast Club. That is not a violation of free speech.
It's true.
There's been
It was weird. He said pocketbook. Like pocketbook is what my grandma used to call her purse. So I don't know if Ben has a purse, but it was kind of weird to hear him say pocketbook. But the reality is he wouldn't hire her today because of things that she said about Israel.
The word anti-Semite has been thrown around Candace Owens a lot. Do you feel like she's anti-Semitic?
I will say that some of the things that she says would, to me, certainly fall in that category. I try not to use that terminology. And the reason I try not to use that terminology is I don't think that it's useful. I think that the term has been emptied of sort of all of its content in the same way that Americans are now used to, I think, everyone being called racist. And so they stopped actually paying attention to racism in many ways, which is, I think, quite bad. I want to avoid.
Says the guy who whines about Israel and woe is us.
Doing the same thing here.
So what's the solution, Ben? When you talk about inequality and civic inclusion, what's the solution? We've talked about a lot. Are we just selling?
Yeah, this is absolutely sad, but you need to know who owns it. I think we can get to that part now. So here's the thing. Everybody plays a fool sometimes. I don't even think that Charlemagne and them are the ones booking the guests. I think the producers are booking the guests for that show. And they probably have to run things by the owner. So I just want to show you something, okay? Breakfast Club is a part of iHeart Radio. iHeart Radio is part of iHeart Media. Shout out to Nat Turner's Apostle. That's an interesting name. This is Charlemagne the God's boss, the boss of the Breakfast Club program, Bob Pittman, CEO. Check this out. UGA to honor iHeart Media's Bob Pittman, Rich Bressler, John Sykes, and Ton Pohlman. What's UGA? UGA, check this out. It's called United Jewish Appeal Federation of Jewish Philanthropies of New York. Is UGA pro-Israel? At UGA, everything we do is rooted in strengthening Israel's security, resilience, and future. We have invested in $300 million in emergency funds and annual budget to protect the lives, rebuild communities, and help Israel recover from challenges. $300 million. But Ben Shapiro wants you to think that they're victimized. Is everybody seeing what is happening here? So the CEO, Bob Pittman, and team, we'll show you the shareholders in just a second. They were honored by UGA, so they're a part of UGA. UGA is stating right here that everything they do is rooted in strengthening Israel's security, resilience, and future. Does everybody put it together now? Then you got to see the shareholders, because that ain't it. When we look at the shareholders, again, of iHeart Media Incorporated, Pacific Investment Management Company, Global Media and Entertainment Investments, BlackRock Advisors, Vanguard, Fiduciary Trust Co., and Oak Hill Advisors. I'll make it bigger for you so you can see. Because see, this is what it really comes down to, folks. The shareholders. So do you see? Here's the big red flags right here. I'm not familiar with the other ones, but BlackRock Advisors, LLC, and Vanguard. That's what matters. Some people think that Charlemagne owns the show The Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club is a radio show that is a part of iHeart Radio, which is a part of iHeart Media Group. He's a host. And now you know who his boss is. And now you know that his boss and them are pro-Israel and do everything they can to support Israel. So is Charlemagne playing a fool purposefully? or is he just being foolish? Now, everybody play the fool sometimes. And a lot of people saw this interview, but I bet you they didn't go to check and see who is really calling the shots at the Breakfast Club. It's not Charlemagne the God. Something to think about. All right, guys, we are going to do call-in. I'm just going to take a 5-minute break, 5-ish minute break. I'll be back and we'll get it going.
Plays the fool.
Sometimes.
No exception to the rule. All right. All right. So this is the part of our show, not when we start singing, but when we're working on our transition to a Zoom call-in, Zoom hangout, formerly known as call-in. That's where we like to hear from you all. Let us know what you think. We'll be giving you the link shortly. Sabrina actually sets up the room while she's out on break here, and we're actually going to have a little announcement about the Thursday show, but you're going to have to come into call-in to get the announcement, but more on that later. Meanwhile, we got some super chats here. Let's see what we got. And let me see. And Corey, if you can hear me, can you also set up, I think there's a Rockfin rant out there, but let's see. I don't think we read this one yet. If we did, well, fine. From Helpful Harm, thanks for the super chat. This is about Trump's signatures, saying so much photo proof, etc., but signatures now used as quote unquote real proof sounds like future plots against others because these are so easy to forge. Media does this. Yeah, it's that, you know what. One of the things with this whole Trump thing, you know, did he send the card? Is it his signature or not? Is that, you know, the only way that you really get to the bottom of these things is if you have a real government, right? A government that's not implacably, thoroughly corrupt. Because if you have a government that's not totally corrupt, right, then you have real congressional hearings. You have, press. You know, ideally also an uncorrupted press involved, and Congress can hold hearings, and you know that's how the system's supposed to work. You get to the bottom of these things, and instead, you know, it's everything is for the billionaires, right? That's the bottom line with all this, and so and so that's why I always push for connecting the dots. In that you have to get, nothing really gets better until you fix the big money in the government, until you decorrupt that. You know, really all roads, all dots lead back to that. And that's why it's what you keep coming back to. It's why it's about what 11 Demands focuses on. So if you really want real change, you know, I would submit that's the path that we need to be going on. Thanks to Super Chat Anthony, who says, nations do not fight moral wars, only moral and just wars. Moral to elicit support of the people, just to satisfy the interests of the nation. And I would just add to that all all modern wars are resource wars. It's really what they really come down to. Whether you're talking about the Iraq wars, or just oil wars, what's happening now in Gaza. I mean, what's Israel doing? It's a land grab. It's a genocidal land grab, and it's important to understand those things, how these are resource wars, because then you start again connecting those dots and back to what's really behind all this stuff. And what's behind it all is the billionaires pull the puppet strings of our government. And until we cut those strings, nothing really gets better. And, I would say let's talk about that more in the Zoom call-in too. We were, in fact, in the chat, we were, there was the Zohran Mandami was one of the stories. And there's, I'll just say about Mandami is that you can find on the 11 Demand site and on the 11 Demand Substack, a posting on there from June called "The Problem with Zohran Mandami," calling out that he's not going to be a great progressive hero, and Number one, I mean, he's a Democrat. He's a member of the Uniparty, and you can't be a member of a thoroughly corrupt, warmongering, genocidal party and be a progressive hero. Those things are not compatible. And so the only way that really anyone like a Mandami or a Thomas Massey, for that matter, to really help us is, number one, leave the Uniparty, exit those corrupt parties. And that's really key to what we're talking about when it comes to 11 demands, when it comes to MCDS. And and then people will say that, oh, well, a third party can't win. Like they never win. And what I would say to that is, and that people don't know, they don't understand that they need to be voting third party and not the Uniparty. Well, then, what do we do about that? Do we sit around and complain? Oh, people never vote third party, so we can't have third party. Or do we start doing something about it? And so I think we should challenge every one of us ourselves and say, what can I, do about that? And it's about educating people. It's about having clear demands, and it's about rolling all that into a movement. And if enough of us have clear demands about what needs to happen, about not falling for the Uniparty theater and getting too caught up in it, about always connecting the dots back to the billionaire class, back to the puppet masters who are pulling the strings and corrupting our government. If enough of us do that, then we can generate it into numbers. And that's the key. This needs to be a mass movement of millions of people having clear demands. If we can do that, anything is possible. If we don't do that, then essentially nothing is possible. It keeps, going on the way it is. But that's what I would put out there with 11 demands. I invite all of you to check that out. 11demands.org. It's easy to find. And let's see what we can all do about this. We do have a Rumble rant. Let me see what we got out there. Thanks for this rant on the Rumbles. JT23, who says, I don't think it's a point of Charlemagne not knowing what to say, but more a point of Charlemagne knowing what not to say. Monique wasn't wrong about that guy. Yeah, that's a good point, Jay. It's about
Did we
what
get the
Charlemagne's
super
paid.
Did we get the super chats?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's about Charlemagne being paid and knowing what not to say, right? As part of
Right.
it. And yeah, what a weasel Shapiro's game. It's just all like, just to, I've heard that called as a Gish Gallop. It's a debate topic where you just keep putting point after point after point out there. There was some debater named Gish who used to do that. This is going way back, but it's a terminology I've heard. And then it's a way you win the debate because you just put out 100 points and people, can't deal with everything you put out there. That's why it's great when you run his clips and you stop them and you say, okay, this is bullshit, run a little more and stop them, say this is bullshit as well. Anyways, and the other thing, so with the Zoom Hangout, we are going to have an announcement about our Thursday show guests, but you have to go into the Zoom Hangout to hear it.
Yeah. We got a good
teaser.
one.
So we'll
Good
talk
one
about
coming
it
on
in Zoom.
Thursday. Yeah. All right, guys. So that link for the call-in is pinned at the very top of the live chat. I'm going to go ahead and open the room while I'm on the stream so people can make sure people get into the room. The way that this works, this is Zoom. If you want to speak, if you want to call in, basically you just, at the very bottom of the screen, there's an option to raise your hand, select raise hand. And that lets me know that you want to speak. Also, everyone in the call-in, can you please mute your mic once you entered? Please mute your mic. Eric, once you've joined, I will go ahead and make you a co-host. All right. We just need everyone to mute. All right. Eric is there. I'll make you a co-host. And this is where we just, chat it up, guys. Whatever you want to, talk about. People usually talk about the stories that were mentioned tonight. If you come in a little bit later in the stream, you can also catch that link for the call in at sabbysabs2.com.
See you.
See you guys there. We have a pretty cool guest coming on Thursday, so we can talk a little bit about that at the call-in as well. And that is all for me tonight, guys. Everybody plays the fool sometimes. Go listen to the song if you're not during the call-in. All right, guys, that's it for me. Have a good night. Hey, hey, hey. Keep up the fight.